Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Zoe Hastings. Zoe Hastings was born on November 21, 1996 in Kansas, the oldest of 5 siblings, including 3 sisters and a brother. Zoe helped her parents take care of her younger siblings, willing to cancel any plans if her parents needed help. Her parents were very religious, so the family spent a lot of time at church. At some point, Zoe's family moved to Dallas, where she attended a high school specializing in the arts and creativity. This environment nurtured her passion for painting and encouraged her to participate in school theater productions. Outside of school, Zoe continued to pursue her creativity by working at a local art studio in Dallas. She also worked as a lifeguard at a community pool during the summer months. After graduating from high school, Zoe had the opportunity to attend some of the country's top universities. Instead, she decided to postpone her studies and focus on her church. In October 2015, at the age of 18, Zoe was preparing to go on a church mission trip and was looking forward to it. On Sunday, October 11th, she planned to attend a service where they would discuss the details of the trip. Zoe took the family car, promised her parents she would be home for dinner, and left home around 4:40 p.m. The church was only a few miles away, and her parents expected her to return around 6:30 p.m. However, as time passed and Zoe did not return home for dinner, her family began to worry. This was out of character for her, and they had not been able to reach her via text or phone call. They tried to contact her friends and family members, thinking she might have stopped by to visit, but no one had seen her. As their concern turned to alarm, her parents called the church, hoping to find an explanation for her absence. Instead, they were shocked to learn that Zoe had not attended the service. Her parents grew even more concerned and decided to contact the police. They called 911. But for some reason, the police did not come to their house, so her parents drove to the police station themselves, filed a report, and began searching for their daughter. Despite following the route from their home to the church several times, they found no trace of Zoe. The search continued throughout the night. When morning came, Zoe's mother remembered that her daughter's iPhone had a tracking app that could reveal her location. Using the app, they discovered that Zoe's phone was near a small creek, just a few hundred yards from the church. Her parents immediately went to the location. They were horrified to see a large number of police cars, as well as ambulances and emergency services. When they approached one of the police officers, they explained that they were looking for their daughter, and the officer informed them that there had been a car accident a few hours earlier. Police told her parents that a dog walker called the police after being alerted to the accident by a passerby. The passerby told the dog walker that there was an injured woman near the creek. The dog walker then ran to the scene, found the woman lying in a pool of blood, and called 911. The officer quickly identified the deceased as Zoe Hastings. They immediately realized that she had not died in an accident. It was clear from the first glance that she had been the victim of a murder. Zoe's body was found a few hundred yards from the partially submerged minivan in the creek. A significant amount of blood was found near her body, along with multiple cuts to her neck. Her skirt had been pulled up and her underwear pulled down, suggesting that the killer may have also sexually assaulted her. Zoe's parents attempted to approach their daughter but were stopped by police. After investigating, the police discovered some important evidence. Notably, all the doors of the minivan, except for the driver's side door, were locked. This detail suggests that the perpetrator may have driven or approached Zoe directly at the scene. A bloody knife, believed to be the murder weapon, was found by the police near the creek, near an embankment under the bridge. Zoe's smartphone provided important information that helped the police reconstruct the sequence of events. GPS data showed that she arrived at the creek at 5:01 p.m., just 20 minutes after leaving her home. It appears that she was killed shortly after arriving. In addition, the police also discovered that after leaving her home, Zoe made one stop. She went to a DVD rental service near the local Walgreens to return a movie. While forensic experts were examining the body, police decided to look for potential witnesses who were in or near the store at the same time as Zoe. After interviewing several people, they found two potential witnesses. One was Lester Clark, who worked at a nearby tattoo parlor. He had come into the store around 4:45 p.m. to buy cigarettes and saw a woman near the DVD rental area. He then saw her walk back to the parking lot and try to get into a white pickup truck. A man approached her, stopped her from opening the door, said something, and then the two got into the truck and drove away. When the police showed Lester a photo of Zoe, he said the woman looked similar. Although he found the scene quite tense, he didn't think much of it, as it didn't seem like anything bad had happened. The witness described the man as short, stocky, and African American. However, Lester was too far from the parking lot to notice any other features. Later, as it got dark, he saw the man walking toward the store alone. A second witness, Gary Whitman, a homeless man, reported a similar incident. At approximately 4:45 p.m., he was standing across the parking lot when he saw a woman approaching a white pickup truck. A man suddenly appeared from behind her, blocking her from getting into the vehicle. The man then showed the woman something he had taken from his pocket. The woman then got into the car and moved into the passenger seat, while the man got into the driver's seat and drove away. Gary described the suspect similarly to Lester. While police were interviewing witnesses, forensic experts made several important discoveries. A forensic pathologist examined the victim and found a small amount of male DNA, not enough for a full DNA analysis. This finding supported the theory that the perpetrator had sexually assaulted Zoe before killing her. A separate examination of Zoe's car did not find anyone else's fingerprints on the door or steering wheel. This was surprising, as witness testimony suggested that the suspect may have driven the victim out of the store's parking lot in her small car. However, police believe that the killer wiped the steering wheel and door handles after the crime to remove any evidence. Several hairs were found on Zoe's body, but they were too small for experts to extract a complete DNA sample. However, a breakthrough came when they tested a knife found near the crime scene. A DNA sample was found on the knife and uploaded to the FBI database, resulting in a match. The DNA belonged to Antonio Cochran, 34, a man with a lengthy criminal record that began as a teenager, including arrests for burglary, assault, and home invasion. In 2014, Antonio had a history of being suspected of multiple crimes. One notable case involved his girlfriend's 17-year-old daughter, who accused him of sexual assault. She reported that Antonio offered to drive her, but instead of taking her to her destination, he drove her to a remote wooded area. There, he threatened to kill her if she tried to escape and then attacked her. After his arrest, Antonio claimed that the encounter was consensual. The case went to trial, where the prosecution failed to present enough evidence to prove Antonio's guilt, resulting in a not guilty verdict. Police identified Antonio as the prime suspect after finding his DNA on the knife and arrested him. During questioning, Antonio repeatedly denied any involvement in the murder. To gather further evidence, police compared Antonio's DNA to hair and semen found on Zoe. However, the samples were too small to extract a full DNA profile. Police analyzed Antonio's smartphone and discovered a series of text messages that revealed his unstable mental state on the day of the murder. At 1:48 a.m. the day before Zoe died, Antonio texted a friend who lived with him, saying he was moving out and would never see her again. Later that day, at 2:07 p.m., he texted his ex-girlfriend to say that his stepmother had died. He mentioned that she had died right in front of him and that he was having a hard time coming to terms with the loss. In the following hours, Antonio sent 2 text messages to another woman, saying that he had spent the night drinking, driving around the city and crying. These were his last text messages before Zoe died. That evening, at 9:30 p.m., Antonio texted his friend again, expressing his confusion about what to do with his life and lamenting that things had gotten worse. The next day, Antonio sent another text to his ex-girlfriend, saying that his life was over and that she would soon find out why. A check of Antonio's browser search history showed that he had visited local news websites more than 30 times before his arrest, often checking the crime section. Notably, 5 of these visits were to read articles specifically about Zoe's case. Data from Antonio's smartphone provided another lead for police. Experts retrieved GPS data from his phone and discovered that at 4:34 p.m., his phone connected to a cell tower that covered the area of a store. This coincided with the time Zoe was there, but this data wasn't considered strong evidence as it only indicated that his phone was within a few miles of the tower. The police discovered that Antonio had started working at a grocery store just 3 days before the incident. However, he had not shown up for work on Monday, the day after the murder, without providing any explanation. Despite the long list of circumstantial evidence against Antonio, the only strong evidence was his DNA on the handle of the knife. However, such evidence is usually not enough to convict because simply holding the knife does not prove murder. For example, he could have used the knife in other situations and someone else could have used it to commit the crime. But the police could not find any other evidence, so they decided to proceed and take the case to court. The prosecution presented an account of the events that took place that day. According to their account, when Zoe returned to her car in the parking lot, Antonio approached her, pulled out a knife, and threatened her to get in the car. He then took control of the car and drove away. The prosecution's case also included text messages that Antonio had sent before the murder, which showed that he was distraught due to the death of his stepmother. According to police, Antonio had been drinking heavily when he decided to kidnap and attack Zoe. He chose Zoe only because she was in the parking lot at the time. Antonio drove to a secluded creek surrounded by trees, where he forced Zoe out of the car, attacked her, and stabbed her 6 times in the neck. He then tried to drive into the creek to hide the evidence. But it was only partially submerged. Antonio wiped the steering wheel and door handles to remove fingerprints before fleeing the scene. According to the first witness, a man resembling Antonio was seen walking back to the store's parking lot that evening. However, the defense argued that most of the evidence did not directly link Antonio to the crime. For example, a hair and semen analysis only showed that Antonio could not be ruled out as the source, but did not confirm his involvement. The defense also argued that the DNA on the knife did not necessarily mean that Antonio was involved in the murder. They suggested that Antonio could have come into contact with the knife in another situation, such as when he worked at a movie theater and had to collect items left by customers. Furthermore, if someone else had used the knife from the movie theater to kill someone, it would have been difficult for them to avoid getting Antonio's DNA off the handle. The defense questioned the credibility of Gary, a homeless man who was the second witness, because he had an active arrest warrant for violating the terms of his parole. The defense attempted to exclude his testimony, but the prosecution disagreed. They argued that Gary's voluntary contact with the police, despite orders from him, showed that he genuinely wanted to help. Gary said he was just trying to do the right thing, even though he knew he would be arrested. Antonio's attorneys attempted to establish an alibi for their client, claiming that he was helping a friend at the time of Zoe's murder. However, they failed to present substantial evidence to support this claim. The prosecution initially sought the death penalty for Antonio, but as the trial progressed, it became clear that the evidence was not strong enough to achieve that outcome. The prosecution subsequently dropped its request for the death penalty. After a lengthy deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict and Antonio was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Zoe's parents expressed their gratitude to the police and those involved in the trial for bringing justice to their daughter's case. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Mackenzie Lueck. Mackenzie Lueck was born on March 8, 1996. Her father, Gregory Lueck, worked in healthcare logistics and administration, while her mother, Diana, was a homemaker. She grew up in El Segundo, Los Angeles County, California, with an older brother and two younger brothers. Mackenzie attended El Segundo High School, where she was on the swim team and played water polo. She was a dedicated student with a passion for art, music, and animals. After graduating, she enrolled at the University of Utah, majoring in kinesiology and nursing. She was also involved in the Alpha Kappa Omega sorority. While at the University of Utah, she expressed her support for women's rights and later left one of the major political parties to join a third conservative party. Mackenzie works at a biotesting company in Salt Lake City. She recalls the days when she biked to the Pacific Ocean, wearing a bikini and sunbathing in the high desert. She plans to pursue a career in the healthcare field, is considering nursing or medical school, and is scheduled to graduate in May 2020. The Lueck family was typical, but everything changed on June 17, 2019, when Mackenzie returned to Salt Lake City after her grandmother's funeral. Early on the morning of June 17, around 2 a.m., Mackenzie texted her mother after landing at Salt Lake City International Airport from California, "Landed and love you, Mom." However, when Diana tried to contact Mackenzie again, she realized that her daughter's phone was turned off. Gregory also called Mackenzie, but it went straight to voicemail, leaving the Lueck family worried about her well-being. On June 20th, Mackenzie's parents discovered that her friends had not heard from her either. They reported Mackenzie missing to the Salt Lake City Police Department. Over the next 2 weeks, Mackenzie's family attempted to track her down from California. Members of Mackenzie's Alpha Kappa Omega sorority began searching for her in Utah. Together, they created a Find Mackenzie Lueck Facebook page to bring national media attention to the matter. Investigators are working to figure out what happened. They have video evidence showing Mackenzie at the airport. She was then taken by a Lyft driver to Hatch Park in North Salt Lake, about 13 miles from the airport. Investigators have also verified Mackenzie's cell phone information, confirming that she was at the park. Detectives have discovered that Mackenzie had been exchanging text messages with a stranger named Iola Ajayi. Mackenzie is believed to have met Iola through a dating website and agreed to meet. The last text message Mackenzie sent to Iola was at 2:58 a.m. Cell phone data showed that both Mackenzie and Iola were at Hatch Park, and at 2:59 a.m., Mackenzie's phone stopped transmitting location data, indicating that her phone was turned off. Detectives then tracked Iola's cell phone signal, leading them from the park to his home at 547 North 1000 West in the Fair Park neighborhood. Investigators determined that Iola's cell phone was at his home at 3:07 a.m., just 7 to 8 minutes after he picked up Mackenzie from the park. Based on this evidence, detectives decided to execute a search warrant at Iola's home because he was considered a prime suspect in Mackenzie's disappearance. During the search of Iola's residence, a neighbor reported a terrible odor coming from a gasoline-fueled campfire in Iola's backyard, next to a garage, on June 17th and 18th. Investigators impounded Iola's vehicle when they detected a strong odor of gasoline and found a red gasoline can in the trunk. They determined that Iola had purchased a similar can of gasoline at a local store on the morning of Mackenzie's disappearance, at 9 a.m. After Iola was arrested, investigators analyzed his cell phone records and located the phone in Logan Canyon, where Iola admitted to his attorney that he had buried Mackenzie's body on June 25th, between 2:30 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. Detectives conducted a thorough investigation of the area and discovered a disturbed dirt in a wooded area near a major road. There, they found the charred remains of a person. An autopsy conducted on July 3 identified the body as that of Mackenzie Lueck. She had been bound with rope behind her back. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be blunt force trauma to the left side of the skull and ruled her death a homicide. On October 7, 2020, Iola was convicted of first-degree murder and third-degree indignity in connection with Mackenzie's death. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole and an additional 5 years in prison for the indignity to Mackenzie's body. Iola was also charged with kidnapping another woman he met on a dating app in March 2018. The victim turned herself in after Iola was arrested for Mackenzie's murder. On October 7, 2020, Iola pleaded guilty to second-degree sexual abuse in connection with that case and was later sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison. Iola was charged with 19 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. These charges arose in August 2019 after police discovered multiple images of child pornography on his computer during the investigation into Mackenzie's death. The images, allegedly depicting children between the ages of 4 and 8, were discovered on July 2. Iola pleaded not guilty on October 1, 2020, and the charges related to the obscene act were later dismissed. The tragic loss of Mackenzie Lueck has shocked her loved ones and the nation. Her bright smile, zest for life, and dream of making a difference were taken from her in a senseless way. Nevertheless, Mackenzie's loved ones have come together to remember and honor her life. Her sorority friends remember her as a shining light, always ready to help and encourage. Through her art, music, and love for animals, Mackenzie's spirit lives on. Her story serves as a reminder to be vigilant and cautious, especially when engaging in online dating services. But more importantly, it reminds us of the value of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. Rest in peace, Mackenzie Lueck. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Born on July 16, 1982, Katrina is the youngest of Vicky's 3 children. She has 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda. Katrina's parents separated when she was young, and she lived with her mother in Mason, Illinois, a suburb outside the city. Katrina is a kind, cheerful person who brings joy to those around her. She especially loves the holiday season and enjoys giving humorous gifts to friends and family. Katrina is a devoted church member, always willing to help those in need. Katrina was content with her life, and in her 20s, she met Todd Smith at a bar. Todd was not only charming but also successful. As a financial planner, he was able to run his own business from home. They found that they had a lot in common and their relationship blossomed. One thing that helped their relationship grow was Todd's flexible work schedule, which allowed them to travel extensively together. After 3 years of dating, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. The couple began planning their wedding, deciding to have an intimate ceremony at a local park. Katrina was thrilled at the prospect of their future together, especially since she had fallen in love with Todd's 3 daughters and was excited to be a part of their lives. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, found him to be trustworthy and personable. They believed that he would take good care of Katrina. After their marriage, Katrina and Todd began living together in Masny. On October 20, 2012, Katrina called her mother to say that she was house-sitting for a friend. During the conversation, Katrina mentioned that she would be coming to dinner on October 24th and that she had something to share with Vicky, leaving her mother wondering what it could be. Before the conversation ended, Vicky promised to make Katrina's favorite meal: chicken and dumplings, a promise she never kept. On October 23rd, Todd Smith called 911, reporting that his wife Katrina had disappeared. He had been trying to reach her for hours without success. He told police that she was house-sitting for a friend and that the house was empty when he arrived. When Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, learned of her disappearance, they were worried. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help find his sister. That night, a resident called police about an abandoned car near Rock River. After investigating, the police determined that the car belonged to Katrina. They could not find any signs of a fight or anything else that would indicate that she was missing. Vicky's worst fears were confirmed when she learned that Katrina's daughter's car had been found abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road in an unfamiliar area. The situation seemed ominous, and Vicky could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to Katrina. If Katrina's car was in that area, then someone must have taken her and left the car there. After the discovery of the car, Katrina's case was officially declared a missing persons case and search efforts were intensified. At 11 p.m. on October 12th, Todd was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for questioning. During the interview, Todd told police that he last saw his wife, Katrina, on October 22nd. According to Todd, Katrina had come to their home for a short time to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the following day. While doing laundry, she went to the mall to buy groceries and returned home at 8:30 p.m. After returning home, she left again, as she was house-sitting for a friend, as she told Todd. After Katrina was reported missing, her husband Todd made a heartfelt public appeal, pleading for her safe return. Todd broke down in tears, begging anyone with information about Katrina's disappearance to come forward. Speaking to the media, he urged the public to share any information they had about her whereabouts. As the search for Katrina continued, police and volunteers formed search teams to comb the area. They focused their efforts near the park where Katrina's abandoned car was found, hoping to uncover evidence or clues. Upon arriving in Illinois after military training in Oklahoma, Katrina's brother Chad met a group of people at the park who were eager to help find Katrina. To facilitate the search effort, Chad used his military training to lead the volunteers. He carefully mapped the area, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated a thorough investigation. As part of this effort, police used trained dogs to join the search. Katrina's mother, Vicky, created missing person flyers and distributed them throughout town, placing them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lamp posts to notify as many people as possible of her daughter's disappearance. Despite her efforts, Vicky's emotional state due to grief and fear made it difficult for her to participate in the search. Chad, who had supported Todd throughout this time, encouraged him to focus on finding Katrina, reminding him that they needed to stay strong. Later, a police officer discovered several items near Katrina's abandoned car. These items included a wallet, a cell phone, and a towel that appeared to have been used to wipe up blood. It was clear that someone had thrown these items away when they left the car. At that point, the police suspected that something terrible had happened. The items discovered have been sent to the crime lab for further analysis, and police are anxiously awaiting the test results to shed further light on the investigation. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, police investigated her personal life for clues. They wanted to understand every aspect of her life by looking into her relationships, daily routine, and any potential involvement in activities such as gambling or drug use. To gather information, police interviewed Katrina's friends and family members. They all described Katrina as a kind and responsible person. Katrina's family and friends described her as a dedicated and hardworking person. They claimed that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. Instead, They described her as a devoted wife and a woman of integrity. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, a local woman came forward with a useful piece of information. She claimed to have seen a blue car matching Katrina's parked on a bridge over the Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it, but the woman could not tell the person's gender or race, preventing her from providing further details. Police had to investigate possible motives and consider whether anyone, including those close to Katrina, wanted to harm her. Despite claims of a happy marriage, Todd became a target of interest, as police know that even seemingly happy relationships can harbor hidden conflicts or secrets. 3 days after searching for Katrina, police examined her cell phone at the crime lab and found vital information. The phone provided a wealth of data, including text messages, incoming and outgoing calls, photos, videos, and her GPS location. This information allowed police to reconstruct a clear picture of Katrina's activities. Notably, they discovered that she was having an affair with a coworker named Guy Gabriel. The relationship began when they met after work one evening. Initially getting along well, it eventually developed into a romantic relationship. A police background check on Guy revealed a troubled past. It revealed a history of domestic violence, and the police suspected him of being involved in Katrina's disappearance. Furthermore, the police discovered text messages sent by Guy to Katrina, pressuring her to leave her husband Todd for him. Guy then became the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that Guy may have reacted violently after Katrina refused to leave her husband for him. The revelation of Katrina's affair shocked her family and friends, as they believed her marriage to Todd was perfect and happy. No one suspected that Katrina had been having an affair behind Todd's back. When Todd discovered the affair through the police investigation, he was devastated. The news of his wife's affair hit him hard, taking him completely by surprise. Guy was interviewed by police about Katrina's disappearance. During the interview, Guy appeared nervous and admitted to his affair with Katrina, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claimed to have been at work the night Katrina went missing. Further investigation uncovered a previous incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina went missing. It was reported that during lunchtime at the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, a black Volkswagen Jetta drove through the parking lot with the sunroof open. The driver, who was wearing a mask, handed out flyers through the sunroof. When employees read the flyers, they found a derogatory statement about Katrina and Guy's relationship. The car quickly sped away, leaving people wondering who the mysterious driver was. Police interviewed Katrina's hairdresser, who shared that Katrina felt threatened and wanted to buy a gun for self-defense. Katrina told her hairdresser that she suspected someone was following her. Police searched Katrina's car at the police garage for evidence. Using a chemical called luminol, which glows when it comes into contact with blood, they found a significant amount of blood in the trunk. On November 9th, 17 days after a firefighter in Rock River discovered a body, and the fire department was called to assist in recovering the body and pulling it from the water. After it was pulled from the water, it was determined that the body was that of a woman. However, because the body was so badly decomposed, identification was difficult. It was unclear whether the body was Katrina's. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to determine the cause of death. To confirm the identity, dental records were sent to a county specialist for analysis. The expert then compared the dental features of the body with those in Katrina's records, confirming that the body was Katrina. Katrina's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. When her family learned that her body had been discovered, they were devastated. The heartbreaking news left them reeling, and it was difficult to accept the full extent of what had happened. Katrina's mother, Vicky, found the news difficult to accept, and the thought of her daughter suffering such a violent end was almost unbearable. Although Guy Gabriel is no longer a suspect, police have sought his perspective on who may have harmed Katrina. Guy reveals that Katrina had mentioned divorce. He believes that Todd's controlling nature may have escalated and led to the tragedy. As police dig deeper into Katrina and Todd's marriage, some disturbing facts come to light. Katrina had told several people that she wanted a divorce from Todd. In addition, police discovered that Katrina had met with a divorce attorney just one day before her disappearance. Contrary to what Katrina claimed, she was not house-sitting at a friend's apartment, but had actually moved out after her split from Todd. Based on the information gathered and interviews conducted, police began to suspect that Todd was behind the mysterious incident at Katrina's workplace. Suspicions were heightened when police discovered that Todd had recently driven a car matching the make and color of the one involved in Katrina's murder, a black VW Jetta. Todd was believed to have been test driving the car at the time of the murder. When police told Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her case and that he had been arrested, they were shocked and in disbelief. The family had loved and respected Todd as a member of the family, and the news was devastating. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was devastated by the news. The thought that her son-in-law could commit such a heinous crime made her sick. She had always trusted Todd and could not imagine that he would commit such a terrible act. The possibility that Todd was responsible for her daughter's murder never crossed her mind. The police discovered that Todd's investment company was in legal trouble and he was no longer working. As a result, Katrina was the family's sole source of income. Based on this information, the police suspected that if Katrina left Todd, she would take the money with her. This possibility may have motivated Todd to consider killing his wife as a way to gain control of the family's finances. Police obtained a search warrant for Todd and Katrina's home to collect evidence. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage that had blood on it, leading police to suspect that it could be the murder weapon. The injuries on Katrina's body supported this theory, as they were consistent with blunt force trauma. To confirm their suspicions, a DNA test was conducted on the bat. The results showed that the blood on the bat belonged to Katrina. Furthermore, police discovered a large, unusually clean area under the car. Upon examination, they discovered that the blood left under the car matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, her husband Todd was arrested and charged in connection with her death. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. During the trial, the prosecution presented its case against Todd, replaying the events of the night Katrina died. Key evidence included a recent meeting between Katrina and a divorce attorney to discuss her marital problems. The prosecution argued that Katrina's decision to divorce indicated that their relationship was in trouble. According to the prosecution, Katrina had visited Todd's home that day to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the next morning. During the visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina had made it clear to Todd that she wanted to end their marriage. They argued that this caused Todd to become aggressive and attack Katrina. The prosecution alleged that while Katrina was in the garage, Todd became angry and picked up a baseball bat, beating her to death. After Katrina died, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. Todd then drove Katrina's body to a remote area called Rock River, where he disposed of the body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. After dumping her body, Todd parked his car on the side of the road and walked home. Once home, he cleaned up any evidence of his crime by disposing of Katrina's cell phone and the bloody towels he used to mop the garage floor. Todd Smith was found guilty by a jury and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Chris Coleman. Chris Coleman was born March 20, 1977. He is a former military. Chris Coleman met his future wife Sherry while he was serving in the Marine Corps, and she was in the United States Air Force. For Sherry, it was love at first sight. She immediately knew Chris was the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. Just a few months later, Sherry became pregnant with their first child, Garrett. Both devout Christians, Chris and Sherry decided to get married before Garrett was born. Chris called his father, Ronald Coleman, to tell him about the marriage and the upcoming baby. Although surprised, Ronald was delighted to learn that Sherry was pregnant. After Garrett was born, Chris and Sherry quickly had a second son, Gavin. Gavin had an energetic personality, while Garrett was calmer, like his father Chris. Both boys were happy and well-behaved. Sherry loved her sons dearly and was protective of them. Chris was a wonderful father and they built a happy family. The family often laughed, played together, and cherished every moment with their sons. After leaving the military, the Coleman family moved to Waterloo, Illinois, a small town. They lived in an upscale neighborhood thanks to Chris's new job. He became the director of security for Joyce Meyer, a famous televangelist and CEO of one of the largest Christian evangelical ministries in the world. However, Joyce Meyer's multi-million-dollar income and lavish lifestyle caused controversy. Some critics claimed that she was a greedy con artist who preyed on the fears of her followers. They argued that her wealth and lavish lifestyle contradicted the religious teachings she preached. Chris was Joyce's personal bodyguard and protector. His main job was to monitor and prevent hate mail and threats sent to Joyce's church. These letters often threatened Joyce's life, with the sender claiming to find and harm her. Joyce's ministry, based in St. Louis, Missouri, hired Chris as a bodyguard. The job paid him $100,000 a year, providing financial stability for his family. In addition to his security duties, Chris often accompanied Joyce on international trips. He was always by her side to ensure her safety. However, this meant that Chris was away from home for long periods of time. According to Sherry, one year Chris worked for Joyce and was away for 260 days. This was stressful for her because her two sons, Garrett and Gavin, missed their father very much. The boys did not like it when their father was away and would mark the days on their calendars to count down the days until he returned. They kept looking at the calendar, eagerly awaiting the day he would return. When Chris returned home, he was away again shortly thereafter. Chris's frequent absences caused a lot of stress in his marriage to Sherry. Sherry was tired of doing everything by herself, playing both mother and father. She felt overwhelmed and underappreciated. This continued to have a negative impact on their relationship. In October 2008, Chris visited Tampa, Florida, where Sherry had attended high school. Before the trip, Sherry contacted her old friend Tara Lintz and asked her to look after Chris while he was in town. After arriving and settling in, Chris reached out to Tara. They decided to meet up and Tara enthusiastically showed Chris around Tampa. At around 11 p.m. on November 14, 2008, Chris received a disturbing email. The email was sent from destroychris@gmail.com, and the subject and content were alarming. The letter demanded that Chris stop working for Joyce Meyer or he and his family would be killed. In the following days, several similar threatening emails were sent from the same address, repeating the threat and giving specific times when his family would be attacked. Notably, the sender of these emails seemed to know Chris's schedule, even his travel plans abroad. Chris informed Sherry of the threatening emails he had received and reported them to the local police the following Monday. He explained that he was often away from home due to his work with Joyce Meyer. The police offered to patrol the area while Chris was away. Despite the increased police patrols, Sherry remained concerned about her family's safety. She invited a friend to stay with her while Chris was away because she felt unsafe being home alone. Sherry emphasized that she was serious about protecting her family and would do whatever it took. To prove her seriousness, Sherry revealed to her friend that she had a gun. She even gave instructions on how to use the gun in case someone broke into the house while she was away. 2 months after the Coleman family began receiving the death threats, a mysterious letter appeared in their mailbox. The letter was delivered directly to them, with no identifying mark on the sender. The message was written in bold letters. The letter contains that, "Renounce your God in public, or there will be no more chances. Time is running out for you and your family." The threat was serious and clear. It showed that if the Coleman family did not comply, they would face dangerous consequences. Sherry was extremely frightened when she received this threatening message. The invasion of her private space and the direct threat to herself and her family made her feel extremely anxious throughout the following period. Sherry's fear increased, as the letter served as a warning of the danger lurking around. After receiving the death threat, Chris and Sherry Coleman decided to increase security measures to protect their family. In an effort to protect their family, Chris installed security cameras around the house. These cameras recorded continuously and streamed live to a monitor in the basement office. The footage was stored on a digital recorder, creating a permanent record. Chris hoped that this system would help him identify the person threatening his family. After Chris installed security cameras outside the house, the threats against the Coleman family stopped. Life for Chris, Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin gradually returned to normal. By April 2009, things had improved dramatically. Sherry told everyone that she felt her marriage was better and was determined to keep it that way. She expressed relief that the death threats had stopped and that she was happy with her life. Her hopes were quickly dashed when a new letter arrived at the Coleman home. This time, the content of the letter was more serious, warning that the worst was about to happen to her. Sherry's husband, Chris, was concerned about the contents of the letter. He decided to check the security camera footage from the night before. To his surprise, he spotted a suspicious figure in the footage, but could not identify the person. This new incident once again raised Sherry's fears and concerns about the safety of her and her children. She lived in constant fear of what might happen. The sense of security she had felt when the threats had subsided was gone. Now, Sherry felt as if her worst nightmare was about to come true. Local police stepped up their efforts to protect the Coleman family from the increasingly serious threats. Justin Barlow, a detective sergeant with the nearby Columbia City Police Department and a neighbor of the Coleman family, took a special interest in the case. Detective Justin took the initiative to call Chris Coleman. During the call, Justin said he had noticed that Chris was often away from home for work. The detective offered his assistance and provided his cell phone number so that Chris could contact him if he needed help or had any concerns. Detective Justin Barlow lived across the street from the Colemans and had installed a surveillance camera at their entrance. He assured Chris Coleman that he could respond faster than the police in an emergency because he lived nearby. For weeks, Justin's camera recorded the Colemans as they went about their daily routines, but failed to detect who had left the death threat. Despite Detective Justin's efforts to investigate, the videos provided no clues or information about the sender of the mysterious messages. On the morning of May 5, 2009, Chris arrived at the gym at 5:45. About an hour after leaving the gym, he called home to check on Sherry and her sons who were awake and ready for school. However, no one answered. Chris called his neighbor, Detective Justin Barlow. At 6:45 a.m. Detective Justin prepared the necessary items such as weapons, handcuffs, flashlights, and radios before going to the Coleman house. While waiting for backup from another unit, he decided to contact Sherry to check on the situation. With a mixture of anticipation and anxiety, Detective Justin approached the Coleman house and knocked loudly, hoping someone would answer. When he arrived, Detective Justin felt uneasy by the suspicious silence that pervaded the house. The lights were off and there was no sign of movement inside, which only added to his anxiety. A few minutes later, a police cruiser arrived to assist. One officer was assigned to check the back of the house, trying to look through the windows or back door for any sign of Sherry and the boys. They discovered signs of forced entry into the basement. This discovery made Detective Justin concerned for the safety of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin, as there might be someone in danger inside the house. They decided to enter the Coleman home through the basement to investigate. When the officers announced their presence, no one answered. They conducted a thorough search of the basement and discovered a disconnected video cable at the computer desk. This led them to the conclusion that the security camera's video recorder had been removed. They left the basement and went up the stairs of the Coleman home. As they moved, they began to smell a strong odor of spray paint. The odor became stronger as they approached the main floor of the home. When they reached the upper floor, they found the walls spray-painted with several offensive messages directed at Chris and Sherry's family. 13 minutes after the call ended, Chris returned home from the gym. Detective Justin asked Chris to stand outside while they searched the home. Chris complied, not asking questions or trying to get in, but just sitting quietly on the porch. Shortly thereafter, a third officer arrived. All three officers were aware of the urgent task of searching the remaining rooms of the house for Sherry and the boys. Upon reaching the second floor of the Coleman home, Detective Justin entered the bedroom of Garrett, the eldest son in the family. Initially, Garrett appeared to be sleeping. However, after a closer examination, the detective discovered that Garrett was dead. His body showed no signs of life and was cold. There were strangulation marks on Garrett's neck, indicating that he had been murdered. The detective was shocked to find Garrett's lifeless body. In the next room, another officer checked Gavin and was horrified to find that the boy was also dead. Both brothers had signs of strangulation. The killer also left an obscene message painted on the bed sheets, adding to the horror of the scene. Meanwhile, an officer entered the master bedroom and witnessed a horrifying scene. Sherry was lying motionless on the bed, dead like her sons. Her hair obscured her face. The police determined that Sherry had been murdered. When they examined the room, they found numerous bruises on Sherry's body. These injuries indicated that she had fought back, defended herself, and tried to protect her sons before she was killed. Detective Justin and the officers had just discovered the bodies of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin. At that time, Chris was waiting outside, hoping to hear news about his family. Detective Justin was forced to inform Chris of the heartbreaking news that his entire family had been murdered. Hearing the news, Chris was completely devastated and extremely distressed by this unbearable news. Detective Justin took Chris aside to give him some privacy to process the information he had just received. As the situation took in, Chris had a very strong reaction. He felt nauseous and his body felt like it was collapsing. Chris curled up into a ball, unable to control his emotions. He was completely overwhelmed by the shock and could not believe that his family had been kidnapped in such a brutal way. In a moment of desperation, Chris tried his best to contact his father, Ronald. He called and informed him that something had happened to Sherry and the boys. As soon as he received the news, Ronald realized that Chris was in a state of shock. He could not believe that such a tragedy had happened to his family. News of the gruesome murders involving Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin quickly spread throughout the Waterloo, Illinois community where the Coleman family lived. When the neighbors woke up to hear the terrible news, they were all devastated and confused. The Coleman family was once considered a model American family, with two sons, Garrett and Gavin, who were cute and loved by everyone. A neighbor shared that everyone wished their children were like Garrett and Gavin because they were always polite and kind-hearted. Sherry's family could not accept the brutality of this murder. After discovering his wife and two sons murdered, Chris was taken to a nearby police station for questioning. Justin asked Chris to explain the case. Chris expressed deep remorse for leaving Sherry and the children home alone while he went to exercise. During an interview with Justin, Chris claimed that he did not know who might have killed his family. However, the detective noticed some suspicious points in Chris's behavior. Most notably, Chris did not ask about how his wife and sons were murdered. This lack of interest struck the detective as odd, especially given the severity of the case. It suggested that Chris may not really want to know the details of his family's deaths. During the interview, Justin noticed that Chris tried to hide the scratches on his arms. Despite the warmth of the room, Chris asked for a blanket to cover the wound. This alarmed Justin, as he knew that Chris's wife, Sherry, had put up a fight before she was murdered. When the detective asked about the source of the scratches, Chris explained that he had gotten the scratches while installing a satellite dish the day before. During his interview with detectives at the police station, Chris adamantly denied having an affair. However, he did admit to having a close friend, Tara Lintz, a Florida cocktail bartender and high school classmate of his wife's. Chris admitted that his wife would not approve of them talking to each other. However, he insisted that he had no intention of leaving his wife for Tara and said he would never betray his family like that. The investigation took a turn when a detective contacted Tara in Florida. Tara revealed that she and Chris were not just friends, but had been having an extramarital affair since November 2008. She provided police with her cell phone and laptop, which contained evidence such as emails, intimate photos, and videos that she and Chris exchanged during the relationship. When confronted with this information, Chris admitted that he saw Tara more often than he had initially told detectives. A detailed investigation revealed that Chris and Tara had a secret plan to meet at places where Chris worked for Joyce Meyer. They often chose exotic locations such as Hawaii to have private time away from their families. Chris argued that his relationship with Tara was not an affair, as he believed that an affair required a deeper commitment. However, detectives found important information on Tara's phone and computer. She had a calendar with her wedding date and planned vacations, suggesting that she believed Chris would leave his family for her. This evidence made detectives skeptical of Chris's testimony, as it contradicted his claim that their relationship was not serious. Chris's father, Ronald, was shocked to learn that his son was having an affair with Tara. However, he insisted that the relationship had nothing to do with the murder of Chris's wife and son. Ronald described Chris as a gentle, quiet person with no violent tendencies. He believed his son could not have committed such a serious crime. Although detectives believed that Chris' relationship with Tara could have been a motive for the murder, the initial investigation did not find enough evidence to charge him. As a result, after 6 hours of questioning, Chris was allowed to leave the police station without being charged. Tara was linked to the murders of Sherry, Garrett and Gavin Coleman, but was later ruled out as a suspect when police confirmed that she was in Florida at the time of the family's murder on May 5, 2009. The case led to the largest investigation in Illinois history. A task force of 25 detectives was established, working 20 hours a day for 15 days with the assistance of specialists. The main focus of the investigation was to trace the source of the threatening emails sent to Chris Coleman. Police scrutinized every threatening email Joyce Meyer Ministries had received over the past year, investigating across the country. All of the people who sent emails to the Joyce Meyer Ministry were tracked down and questioned, but none of them were linked to Coleman's murder. A team of computer experts was called in to investigate the Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin murders. Detectives sought their help in the hopes of finding digital evidence of the crimes. The team began by analyzing the diaris@gmail.com email account. During their investigation, they discovered that the email address had been created on November 14, 2008, just days before the first email was sent. A shocking discovery was that the death threats sent to Chris Coleman's family actually came from Chris's own IP address. Investigators continued to investigate by carefully analyzing the spray paint at the scene and Christopher Coleman's handwriting. They took photos of the spray paint and collected samples of Christopher Coleman's handwriting as evidence. These samples were sent to a handwriting expert. After comparing them, the expert concluded that the handwriting matched the spray paint. From there, investigators determined that Christopher Coleman was the person who wrote the words on the wall of his home on the day of the murder. Chemical analysis revealed that the spray paint at the crime scene was Rust-Oleum Candy Apple Red. A detective contacted the manager of the spray paint store after learning that Chris Coleman had made a purchase there a few days before his family was murdered. The manager confirmed that Chris had purchased the same Rust-Oleum Candy Apple Red spray paint. This finding was significant because it linked Chris Coleman to the paint used at the crime scene. The time of death played a key role in the investigation. Chris initially told police that he left home at 5:45 a.m. on May 5, 2009, the morning his family was murdered. However, an autopsy revealed that Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin were killed around 3 a.m. This indicated that Chris was still home when his family was murdered, contradicting his initial statement. 2 weeks after the bodies were discovered, Chris was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Prosecutors argued that Chris was motivated by greed, selfishness, and narcissism. It appeared that Chris wanted to start a new life, and his family became an obstacle. In April 2011, Chris was put on trial for the murders of his wife Sherry and sons Garrett and Gavin. Prosecutors told the jury that Chris killed his family because he wanted to be with his lover, Tara Lintz. However, he could not divorce Sherry because he feared losing his high-paying job at Joyce Meyer Ministries, an organization that did not accept divorces. During the trial, Chris's defense attorney argued that his client was innocent of the family murders. They alleged that an intruder entered the home and killed the family on May 5, 2009. However, 2 years after the murders of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin, Chris was convicted of murder. The judge sentenced Chris to life in prison without parole, rather than the death penalty. This decision was made because the state of Illinois had abolished the death penalty, which was expected to take effect just months after the case. Hey everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Courtney Holden. Courtney Holden was born on February 28, 1992. When she was 2 years old, she was sent to an orphanage. Life there was not happy, not only for Courtney but for all the other children. Every day at the orphanage began with a prayer. Children of all ages prayed to the Almighty to give them a family and a happy life. Finally, Courtney's dream came true when she was adopted by the Holden family. Courtney arrived in Spokane at the age of 4 and began living in the Holden family home with Joshua and some other foster children. However, instead of finding a loving family as she had hoped, her life here was worse than at the orphanage. What Courtney experienced at the Holden home could only be described as a real nightmare. From a young age, she was forced to do all the housework. She had to clean the whole house and wash the dishes after every meal for the entire family. If she made a mistake, she was punished. Surprisingly, the Holden family treated the other foster children better. No one understood why they disliked her so much. Judy Holden was old when she adopted Courtney, and she was the last child they had received from the orphanage. Perhaps this explains their inexplicable cruelty and hatred towards Courtney. She was forbidden to go out without permission and was often abused. Visitors to the house often heard Judy and Joshua calling Courtney Cinderella, as if she were in a fairy tale, but in reality, she was more like a slave to her cruel stepmother and siblings. Courtney was very sensitive and had become accustomed to a difficult life with the Holden family. She feared her foster mother and felt terrified just seeing her brother Joshua. He did not allow her to communicate with her friends. She was not allowed to use a cell phone or other modern devices. She was only allowed to leave the house when necessary and always had to ask for permission. She only enjoyed fresh air and chatted with her neighbors when she was alone in the backyard. However, she became accustomed to this life and did not feel bitter. She still respected her adoptive parents because they were the only family she knew, and she had no concept of a normal family. Courtney experienced a period of freedom when Joshua, due to conflicts with their parents, moved in with his sister for an extended time. For Courtney, this was the happiest period of her life. She finally experienced the freedom she had always longed for, allowing her to go out, walk around, and meet friends. After finishing school, Courtney fell in love for the first time. Michael was an ideal partner. She felt the care and attention from him that she had never received from anyone else. Every time she met Michael, Courtney felt extremely happy. Their relationship lasted until 2011, when they had a son. Michael was eager for Courtney to move in with him to create a complete family. However, for unknown reasons, Courtney refused this offer. She continued to live in a Holden household, which she did not like, and ended her relationship with Michael. After the Holden family went through many changes, their home became deserted. The adopted children grew up and left, and John Holden, Courtney's adoptive father, was passed away. For a while, Courtney lived with her adoptive mother, Judy, and sometimes her son Joshua was allowed to visit with Judy's permission. Their life was quite peaceful when Joshua, Courtney's brother, was away. However, after their father died in 2014, Joshua returned and began causing trouble for the family. He installed many surveillance cameras around the house on Hero Avenue, near Rogers High School in Northeast Spokane. Signs that said, "Smile, you're being watched," were placed all over the yard, with cameras pointing in many directions. This made Courtney nervous because she knew that going out would get her in trouble with Joshua. Courtney's life once again became difficult and uncertain. Around 2015, Courtney revealed to a neighbor that she was again deprived of her right to use a cell phone, manage her social media accounts, communicate with people outside the family, drive, or leave the house without Joshua's permission. After Courtney gave birth, Joshua became so bitter that he forced her to cut off all contact with the baby's father. Courtney silently complied. The neighbor noticed bruises on Courtney's face and arms. When asked, she frankly admitted that Joshua hit her. They were worried and did not understand why Courtney would endure such abuse. They tried to help her by reporting it to the police, but the Holden family always tried to suppress the matter. This was partly because Courtney never publicly admitted that she was being threatened by her brother. Eventually, Courtney was forbidden to talk to neighbors and was only allowed to go out at night. She silently complied. Courtney knew Joshua better than anyone. He was a large, overweight man with considerable strength and was often abusive. Friends of Joshua described him as paranoid, ruthless, and unpredictable. He had bragged in public about his ability to easily end a life and dispose of a body without difficulty. He had a notable criminal record. In 2005, he was charged with assault and harassment, but due to lack of evidence and the victim's unwillingness to cooperate with the police, he was released. He was also suspected of assaulting and sexually abusing a woman in 2003 when the perpetrator could not be identified. In 2006, Joshua was arrested for domestic violence against his mother and burglary. These incidents forced him to flee his parents' home for several years. After returning, Joshua became more violent. He kept complete control over Courtney. She largely cut off contact with her friends, saying she was afraid to go out for fear that Joshua would find out and make things worse. A friend kept in touch with Courtney every day on Facebook until Joshua found out. In her last message, nearly 2 years ago, Courtney said, "I have to go. Joshua is coming home soon." After that, her account has since been permanently deleted. Those who know the Holdens say the family's relationship is unusual. They are surprised that Courtney's child calls Judy mom and Joshua dad, while only calling his biological mother by her first name. This has led some to suspect that Joshua may be the child's biological father. Neighbors and acquaintances have criticized the Holdens' odd lifestyle and antisocial behavior, and have tried to stay away from the house. In August 2018, after an argument, Courtney tried to leave the house with a suitcase of belongings. Her mother, Judy, yelled at her to go home, but Courtney refused. Joshua forcibly took Courtney back into the house. Judy closed the door, and Courtney was unable to escape. This was the last time the neighbors, and perhaps anyone outside the family, saw Courtney. After that, she lived a life of isolation from the outside world. It took nearly 2 years for people to start worrying about her disappearance. In October 2019, Michael expressed concern about not seeing her for nearly 2 years. He wanted to see the child, so he reported Courtney missing to the police on October 24th. The police went to search Holden's house and were surprised to find Courtney was not there. Joshua and Judy refused to cooperate. Judy only allowed the police to look through Courtney's room and then told them to leave. A search dog was used but found nothing. The Holdens claimed that Courtney had abandoned her child and run away. However, they could not explain who was withdrawing Courtney's Social Security benefits and using her electronic food stamps. On the day the police searched the house, Judy and Joshua withdrew the remaining $600 from Courtney's bank account. The next day, a woman claiming to be Courtney called the National Crime Information Center, saying she was safe and did not want to be searched. Police traced the call and found that the woman was Courtney's half-sister. Joshua and Judy later gave conflicting explanations for Courtney's disappearance. They said she ran away with a truck driver and then with a secret lover. Courtney's absence, along with the changing accounts of those who lived with her, made it clear that the Holdens were hiding something. In late October 2019, Joshua and Judy Holden abruptly left Spokane, leading detectives to suspect they were involved in Courtney's disappearance. They were found in Texas, at the home of one of Judy's adopted daughters. Authorities were able to charge them with withholding Courtney's welfare and identity theft, leading to their arrest in Texas. In early October, the Spokane Police Department wanted to check on Courtney's status. The case quickly became a missing persons investigation, which was assigned to Major Crimes Detective Randy Lesser. Courtney was officially declared missing. Alerts were sent to all states, and the media picked up the story, triggering a widespread search. When police and detectives went to check on her home, Joshua and Judy Holden have continued to refuse to cooperate with the investigation. Beside that, Randy told them that he was worried Courtney might be dead and mentioned he was particularly concerned about Joshua's history of violence. Joshua had been charged with assault in the past, but the case was dismissed when the victim stopped cooperating with prosecutors. Investigators are now gathering DNA evidence and court records from that case, which show Joshua was also suspected in another attack in 2003. Neighbors and family described Joshua as mentally unstable, cruel, and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. One neighbor revealed that Joshua was unemployed and that Judy feared him. The neighbor said Joshua and Judy often bragged about how they had eluded the police. Joshua also claimed that killing and hiding a body was easy. Especially when you have kids, you can't just disappear, said Detective Randy. Courtney was also described in court records as a devoted mother who never abandoned her children. For more than 18 months, Courtney was confined to her home and was not allowed to leave. Joshua and Judy gave neighbors and relatives various excuses for her absence, from traveling with her truck driver boyfriend to running away with her fiancé. At one point, they said she was home but not available to receive visitors. When Randy visited their home in early October, Judy claimed that Courtney had just returned home a few days earlier and was taking a walk with her son. However, when asked for her phone number, Judy slammed the door. The police then forced her to let them in to check Courtney's room. According to Randy, Judy appeared very nervous about the situation. According to Randy's court records, the house was extremely messy with items piled everywhere, including on the kitchen counter. Courtney's room was also in disarray, with an empty mattress. Randy commented that it appeared that no one lived there. At one point, Judy panicked. When Randy asked to check the rest of the house for Courtney's child, Judy ordered the investigators to leave. Later that day, a neighbor informed Randy that they had seen Joshua, Judy, and one of Courtney's sisters leave in a truck, along with a child. Detective Randy also became suspicious that Courtney, who suffered from a chronic illness, had not seen a doctor since October 2017. She received her last prescription in July 2017, although she had been taking her medication for months before she disappeared. Despite gaps in her medical records, money continued to be withdrawn from Courtney's bank account each month, and her EBT card was used to purchase groceries. Surveillance footage confirmed Joshua and Judy shopping with a small child. They was also caught on camera withdrawing the remaining money from Courtney's bank account on the day she was declared missing in early October. On October 24th, Joshua and Judy left the home. When police arrived to execute a search warrant, Randy noted that they discovered the DVR from the security camera system had been removed, and the family's 6 pets were also missing. By mid-November, Joshua and Judy's cell phone numbers had been canceled. However, that same day, 2 new phone numbers with Texas area codes were activated on their accounts. About a month after the Holdens moved out, a neighbor called the police to report activity at the house. It was actually one of Judy's daughters and her husband, who had flown in from Texas to check on the property. They said they hadn't seen Courtney in 2 years and that Judy was retired. However, there were inconsistencies in their information. The man told the police that Joshua and Judy had a child, while Judy's daughter insisted that the child was Courtney's. In mid-December, Randy traveled to Texas to look for Joshua and Judy. Police found them at Judy's daughter's house, along with Courtney's son. Joshua and Judy Holden were arrested on multiple charges: identity theft, interference with child custody, unauthorized use of Courtney's bank account, and concealment of her child. The child was found safe and returned to his father. No other family members have been charged with any crime. Police searched Judy's home in Spokane with a search dog but found no trace of Courtney. A search of a home in Texas also turned up nothing. Police also searched a car and trailer belonging to Judy at an RV park in Oklahoma. Joshua, 40, and Judy, 74, are currently in custody in Texas and have refused to answer police questions. They also refused to be extradited to Spokane. With insufficient evidence to prove their involvement in Courtney's disappearance, it is likely that Joshua and Judy will be released. This is perhaps one of the most mysterious disappearances ever. I have 4 notebooks full of different information, Randy said of the month-long investigation. Judy and Joshua continue to maintain that they had nothing to do with Courtney's disappearance, while police believe she is likely dead but have unfortunately not been able to prove it. Domestic violence experts point to a number of factors as to why cases like Courtney's are not always reported. One is the societal assumption that someone else will take care of it. According to Morgan Kern, Director of Counseling and Outreach at the YWCA, fear of retaliation can also be a factor. And people sometimes view it as a family issue, something to be dealt with at home. Although Judy and Joshua have been accused of multiple acts, they have not been charged directly in Courtney's disappearance. However, many still suspect they knew what happened. Joshua not only had a history of aggression but had also claimed to be capable of killing and hiding a body from the police. Investigators believe Courtney is dead, but no suspects have been arrested in the case. To summarize today's story, it is sad that Courtney was victimized by the Holden family. This young woman longed for a loving family but did not have the courage to defend herself. She believed that the people who abused and exploited her were still family. But does a real family need to make you defend yourself like that? Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Redlich. Danielle Redlich, born in Florida in 1976, Danielle's family moved to Cleveland, Ohio when she was a child. Her childhood was unremarkable, as she grew up to be a kind, polite, and creative person. As the eldest child, Danielle developed an appreciation for beauty and pursued higher education. She attended Valencia College, earning an Associate of Arts degree, before continuing her studies in psychology at Baldwin Wallace University. In 1996, Danielle's mother, Caitlin Aquino, remarried. However, the marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. Caitlin later passed away from cancer. It turned out that she had been battling breast cancer for a long time. Before the marriage, Caitlin did not have health insurance, so she married her partner primarily to get comprehensive coverage for her medical treatment. Even with high-quality care, the cancer treatment was not successful. After Caitlin passed away, her husband, Michael Redlich, became a single father of the children and, struggling to care for them alone, sought help from Caitlin's eldest child, Danielle. Danielle was now 22 years old and, after the death of her mother, Caitlin, Danielle gave up her independent life and moved into a single household with her younger brother, younger sister, and stepfather, Michael Redlich. Danielle moved in with her stepfather and helped care for the younger siblings and worked part-time at night. During their time together, Danielle and Michael fell in love and eventually married. While Michael pursued a professional sports career, specifically recruiting players. As they spent more time together, Michael became closer to his children and felt comfortable with Danielle. In return, Danielle saw him as a reliable source of support. Danielle and Michael later became husband and wife. Despite their 20-year age difference, they interacted comfortably, not minding the age gap or social status. Over time, their relationship deepened and they gradually became closer. However, Danielle was initially hesitant to share their relationship with her family, choosing to keep it a secret for a while. Michael's life took a significant turn for the better with Danielle. Both felt rejuvenated, he was full of energy, and she was loved and protected. Thanks to his connections, Michael was able to secure her a job at an advertising agency. It paid well and everything went smoothly for the couple. However, an opportunity soon came up for Michael, who was offered the position of Vice President of Sales for the Memphis Grizzlies basketball team. The problem was that this job required moving to another state. He did not hesitate to ask Danielle to come with him, but she hesitated. With her studies and comfortable lifestyle, she did not want to change her life. Although she initially refused to move, their relationship remained strong and the couple continued to see each other despite the distance. Michael showed Danielle the house he had bought for them in a picturesque area along the Mississippi River. The quiet and cozy neighborhood immediately caught her attention. Danielle decides to move in with Michael and he helps her find a job in radio. Their life starts off seemingly smoothly, but troubling problems begin to arise when Michael's job changes. Michael's stressful work situation. His new position comes with increased responsibilities and pressure, as well as tension with management. As a result, Michael feels overwhelmed, stressed, and exhausted. Michael often turns to alcohol as a way to relieve stress, but this gradually becomes a daily habit. As a result, he often stays up late, comes home drunk and irritable, which puts a significant strain on the family atmosphere. Danielle tries to be supportive and understanding of her husband's difficulties, and initially, after calm conversations with her, Michael seems to calm down and promises to quit drinking. However, these promises are short-lived. Tensions escalated when Michael failed to show up for the dinner they had planned together. Not the first time this had happened, but this time they had specifically arranged to spend the evening together. Danielle was upset and said that if he couldn't make time for her, he should have warned her so she could make other plans. As she walked towards the door, she made an ill-timed joke that unintentionally upset Michael. In a shocked reaction, he slapped her across the face, causing her to stumble backwards. The slap was so hard that she became disoriented and bled. When she noticed the blood splattered on her clothes and the floor, she was so shocked that she backed away from her husband. Michael immediately apologized and began to cry. Faced with the serious injuries his wife suffered, he quickly sought help by taking her to a trusted sports doctor. The doctor examined her and gave her first aid. The doctor noticed that her front tooth was chipped and recommended that she see a dentist for further examination due to the severity of the injury. After the argument, Michael made amends by planning a special and thoughtful dinner. His efforts earned his wife, Danielle, forgiveness, and as a result, she chose not to report the incident. This decision may have been influenced by the state's strict domestic violence laws, as she sympathized with her husband and decided not to cause him any more trouble. However, this was not the first time Michael had displayed disturbing behavior. Danielle had experienced similar incidents with him when they lived in Cleveland. During this time, Michael often became jealous when Danielle's ex-boyfriend visited her. One evening, Michael made some sarcastic comments about her ex-boyfriend while they were driving home, causing Danielle to react in a similar manner. In the heat of the moment, Michael hit Danielle but quickly apologized, claiming that his actions were due to hurt feelings. Danielle chose to forgive Michael, partly blaming herself for what had happened. Over time, the incident was forgotten, as some things that happen in relationships are considered a normal part of life. In 2003, Danielle's family welcomed the birth of their daughter Jaden, marking a memorable milestone in their lives. A year later, they decided to formalize their relationship. Everything was going well, however, Michael faced challenges in his career due to a change in management, which prevented him from getting the promotion he wanted. 7 years later, the family expanded with the birth of a son named Sawyer. The parents were completely focused on raising their children. If it weren't for Michelle's job and the stress it caused, family life would have been perfect. However, Michael's job led to more frequent conflicts and he started drinking again. During an argument, he grabbed Danielle by the neck and pinned her against the wall, scaring her. This time, his wife could not stand the rude behavior, so she packed her things, took the children and moved in with relatives. Michael visited her several times, apologized and asked her to come home. After a while, their relationship was repaired. Danielle's family went through a period of instability. In the following years, her family moved several times. Michael received a job offer in California, where they lived for about 5 years, but this time it was not successful. Michael continued to struggle with personal problems and his excessive drinking. At one point, both he and his wife lost their jobs, forcing them to rely on savings for financial support. In 2014, the family faced another move, this time to Indiana. Although the move was difficult, it brought the promise of a new home and a fresh start. To make the transition smoother, Michael moved to Indiana first, while Danielle and the children remained in California. This temporary separation gave them time to sell their old home and belongings. However, the frequent moves took a toll on the family, especially the children, who had a hard time adjusting to their constantly changing surroundings. The entire process took a year, during which time the family's financial situation improved. But the couple's relationship changed. The distance and infrequent meetings took their toll, and Danielle and Michael became distant and barely communicated. When the couple finally reunited, they faced new problems. Danielle began to suspect Michael of having an affair, his attitude became cold and distant, and the previous affection faded. However, Michael confessed that his age and health were the reasons. He had been embarrassed to mention this before, fearing that he would lose his younger wife. Danielle was moved by Michael's honesty and continued to support him. The couple decided to undergo a course of hormone injections. Testosterone injections rejuvenated Michael physically and mentally. He seemed younger, regaining his former energy and vitality. However, the treatment also made him more aggressive. One evening, after watching a movie together, Michael fell asleep and Danielle went upstairs to rest. The next morning, Michael woke up, went into the bathroom where Danielle was brushing her teeth, and hit her on the head. His excuse for the outburst was that Danielle had not woken him up the night before. After the fight, she told him that she was fed up with his actions and was leaving. This angered Michael, who became violent and strangled her. Danielle was unable to defend herself and began to lose consciousness. At one point, she felt like she was going to die. After a while, Danielle regained consciousness and found her husband standing over her. He was scared and confused, begging for forgiveness. Danielle could only crawl away silently. After the incident, they continued to live together and raise their children together, but from then on, their relationship changed completely. It was clear that the time had come for them to go back. The man began to drink more and more, and tensions in the family increased, with arguments breaking out even over the smallest things. Michael's frustration increasingly turned into physical aggression, but Danielle stayed with him, although she was unhappy and increasingly resentful of her husband. She still loved him deeply, which made her reluctant to leave. The ongoing situation had a profound impact on Danielle. She became increasingly anxious and irritable, leading her to withdraw from social interactions. To distract herself, she turned to photography as a hobby. By the end of 2014, Danielle's family had finally settled into their life in Florida. Michael, exhausted by the stress of his previous job, decided to change careers. He accepted a position as Director of External and Cooperative Programs at the University of Central Florida and began teaching. Although his income was lower than what he had earned in the NBA, the job provided him with joy and stability. Initially, the family rented a house, but after a year they eventually bought their own home in the Winter Park area. Their new home was a Mediterranean-style estate with ample space. Danielle loved the attic, where she often retreated. She often slept there overnight, especially when Michael was in a rage. Michael's testosterone injections had a positive impact on his personal life with Danielle. But his behavior during these intimate moments was still harsh. Their relationship continued to be strained. As a result, Danielle turned to alcohol for comfort. While Michael worked to support the family financially, Danielle took care of the home and children. However, her increasing isolation and the couple's constant arguments eventually led to their separation in 2016. Despite their separation, Michael remained in touch with the children and continued to provide financial support. Danielle found a new job at a school and began to rebuild her life, developing friendships and regaining her independence. Meanwhile, she remained in contact with Michael, allowing him to visit the family home whenever he wanted. Unfortunately, during one of these visits, a violent argument broke out, leaving Danielle hospitalized with brain damage. Fearing the consequences for Michael, she chose not to reveal the truth about the incident. Michael mistook Danielle's silence for acceptance, but it was just a cover. In early October 2016, Michael attempted to run her over with his car, and her life was only saved because she jumped into the bushes at the right time. This prompted Danielle to file a police report, but when the police began to demand more details, she recanted her statement and left the station. The couple later reconciled and moved in together, a decision that ultimately proved fateful for both of them. At approximately 9 a.m. on January 12, 2019, Danielle called 911, reporting that her husband, Michael, had suffered a heart attack and needed assistance. When emergency crews arrived at the scene, they immediately smelled a strong chemical odor coming from the living room. A bucket of pink liquid was also found near the scene. However, the rescue team soon discovered that Michael Redlick had not died of a heart attack as his wife had suggested. Instead, they found him lying on the floor in a pool of blood, the victim of a fatal stab wound. Danielle Redlick was also found at the scene, with a cut to her wrist. Paramedics treated her before taking her to hospital for further care. As police began to examine the scene, they were certain that Michael Redlick was dead. There was no way he could have inflicted such a fatal wound on himself. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the blood found in the home was Michael's. Although someone had attempted to clean it up, the effort was not thorough. Police still found blood stains in the corners of the room and on the walls, indicating that the body had been moved from the bedroom to the living room. In addition, they discovered a large knife near the kitchen entrance and 3 smaller knives in the sink, indicating that the cleanup attempt was unsuccessful. Danielle was questioned by police shortly after a doctor confirmed that her injuries were not life-threatening. During the interview, her statements were inconsistent and contradictory. At first, she said that she thought her husband, Michael, had died of heart disease. She later changed her story, claiming that he had committed suicide after a heated argument. However, forensic experts disputed her claim, pointing out that the nature of the injuries made it unlikely that a person would have inflicted the injuries on themselves. Usually, people who try to end their lives choose a simpler and less painful method. The autopsy results showed that Michael died from excessive blood loss, and if he had received timely medical assistance, his life could have been saved. In addition, he suffered a laceration to his left eye, and toxicology tests also showed a high alcohol concentration in his body. A few days before the incident, Michael and his wife Danielle had a heated argument at home, which was witnessed by their eldest daughter Jaden. During the argument, Michael, who had been drinking, barged into the bathroom where Danielle was hiding. Jaden intervened and took the bottle of wine from her father. Danielle then left the house and only returned after Michael had fallen asleep. Although this was the first time Jaden had seen his father so angry, he later apologized for his behavior many times. Despite the incident, Jaden described his father as a loving and caring person. However, she believes that her mother often instigated conflicts that led to such arguments. The next day, Michael and his wife tried to make up, and he invited her and the children to watch a football game. Although they spent time together, Danielle seemed sad and uncommunicative. After taking the children to a friend's house for a sleepover, the couple returned home alone. That evening, Danielle went to McDonald's and returned home around 10:30 p.m. When she entered the house, she found Michael drunk. While they were having dinner, Danielle received a sudden text message from a strange man. When Michael saw this, he became aggressive, bit into a hamburger and spat at her. He then attacked Danielle, trying to strangle her. In self-defense, Danielle quickly grabbed a nearby knife and stabbed Michael in the chest. He fell to the ground and began to bleed profusely. Danielle claimed that after the incident, she called the emergency services but got the wrong number. This was later confirmed during the investigation. She said that she was so shocked that she lay down next to Michael and slept until morning. Danielle admitted that she lied during the emergency call and subsequent questioning, citing fear as her motive. Specifically, she feared that her claim of self-defense would not be believed. Her concerns were not unfounded, given her recent history. Shortly before the incident, she had been involved in a fight with friends. When police arrived at the scene, she resisted, attempting to bite one of them. She also refused to cooperate with the investigation, resulting in charges of disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. Danielle was placed on probation for approximately 1 year. An investigation revealed that the cuts on Danielle's wrists were self-inflicted due to emotional turmoil, but the injuries were superficial and not life-threatening. Therefore, her words were not to be believed. Upon further investigation, the police discovered that after learning about Michael's affair, she registered on a dating website where she socialized with men retaliated by being unfaithful. Her profile status stated that she was single and not in a relationship. Analysis of numerous messages between Michael and Danielle showed that she still loved her husband. When she learned about his affair, she felt betrayed. Danielle discovered that her husband, Michael, had intended to leave her, despite his constant expressions of remorse and desire to mend their relationship. This fact made it difficult for her to understand and accept his actions. Danielle shared that she felt heartbroken, believing that she had wasted the best years of her life on someone who did not value her. The prosecution used this information to argue that the crime was premeditated, motivated by a desire for revenge for her husband's infidelity and impending divorce. According to Danielle's neighbors, she was prone to fits of rage, and their arguments often escalated into physical fights. Michael and Danielle were viewed differently by those who knew them. Michael was described as kind and helpful, while Danielle was seen as argumentative. Evidence presented in the case showed that Danielle, acting irrationally and attacking her husband. Danielle's attorney argued that her actions were in self-defense and that she had a history of emotional and physical abuse. Relatives who often witnessed their arguments confirmed that Michael was rude and that he often mistreated and humiliated her, although he never did so in front of them. Several family members reported that Danielle was anxious and had a bad temper, which only emerged after many years of marriage. The prosecution focused on the fact that Danielle left her husband to die, possibly out of hatred and resentment towards Michael. In addition, the prosecution emphasized that Danielle would lose a significant portion of their accumulated wealth if they divorced. Furthermore, the prosecution pointed to inconsistencies in Danielle's testimony, suggesting that she was attempting to confuse the investigation and possibly tamper with evidence. Danielle was offered a plea deal during the investigation to admit to manslaughter, which would have resulted in only 10 years in prison. Despite the offer, she declined, choosing instead to maintain her innocence, although she faced life in prison if convicted of first or second-degree murder. Trial takes place on July 17, 2022. The jury returned a verdict, finding Danielle Redlich not guilty of premeditated murder, as they believed her actions were in self-defense. However, they found her guilty of tampering with evidence, which resulted in her receiving a 5-year suspended sentence. On August 5, 2022, the day the verdict was announced, Danielle Redlich was released from court. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Wilma Anderson. Wilma Anderson was born to Linda and Marcus Anderson after her parents divorced. Wilma moved in with her older sister Emily. Despite this difficult situation, Wilma's mother remained closely involved in her life. According to her mother Linda, Wilma was an active and ambitious girl who loved to socialize with people. She loved social media, often sharing photos of her life on Facebook, and enjoyed every opportunity to be captured in photos. At the age of 15, Wilma met Tishko Ahmed Shirzad, 20, in Sweden. Wilma's mother was concerned about her daughter dating someone older, but she trusted Wilma's choice and eventually accepted their relationship. Tishko, who is originally from Iraq, moved to Sweden at the age of 8 to live with her father and stepmother. He became a Swedish citizen in 2014 and eventually found a job in the care industry after completing his studies in 2018. Wilma and Tishko's relationship took a significant step forward when they moved in together in Uddevalla, Sweden. At first, things went smoothly, but over time, their relationship changed and became increasingly troubled. Tishko began to become more controlling, which Wilma's mother noticed, a change in her daughter's behavior during the 2 years Wilma lived with Tishko. Wilma often spoke to her sister Emily about the problems she was having with Tishko. On November 14, 2019, Wilma spoke to Emily on the phone when she went to Tishko's apartment to collect her belongings. During the call, Wilma expressed her intention to end her relationship with Tishko, citing his excessive control over her life. She felt suffocated by his behavior, dictating what she wore, where she went, who she saw, and even how she applied her makeup. Feeling suffocated by his domineering and abusive behavior, she had had enough and just wanted it to end. When Tishko returned home from work, Wilma ended the call. Emily then tried to contact Wilma, but she was unable to reach her. The next day, November 15th, Wilma missed a scheduled dentist appointment. 2 days later, on November 17th, Wilma's parents visited the apartment she shared with her boyfriend. After knocking on the door, a moment later, the door slowly opened and they saw Tishko. Linda was worried and asked Tishko where Wilma was. Tishko told them that he and Wilma had broken up and that she had left after packing her things. He claimed that he did not know where she was and did not expect to see her again. Linda and her husband went into the apartment to try to find out more information by talking to Tishko. Tishko told them what had happened that night, saying that he and Wilma had gotten into a big argument when he got home from work at 5:30 p.m., which ended with Wilma leaving him. Wilma's parents were not too concerned about her absence at first, as her relationship with Tishko was often argumentative and unstable. However, Wilma's sister, Emily, became increasingly concerned and turned to Facebook for help. In her post, Emily explained that Wilma had been missing since November 14th and had not contacted her family, which was unusual for her. Emily described Wilma as being 165 centimeters tall with black hair with blonde highlights. She stressed that this disappearance was out of character for Wilma and expressed her deep concern for her sister's safety. The police were involved, taking a report and starting to collect statements from family and friends. Their goal was to reconstruct her recent activities and interactions. They interviewed those who had last seen or spoken to her. Linda and Emily confirmed that they had not had contact with Wilma since November 14th, noting that their attempts to call her had gone unanswered. A search party was organized, combining the efforts of the police with those of her friends and family, using dogs and drone technology to scan inaccessible areas for any traces. When police questioned Tishko, he denied knowing where Wilma was and said he had not heard from her recently. By Sunday, November 17th, 3 days after Wilma went missing, there was still no sign of her. This was especially worrying because Wilma, who posted frequently on social media, had been completely inactive for an unusually long period of time. The situation became more urgent, prompting some 5,000 people to join the search for her. Police continued to question Tishko, seeking more information, but he maintained that he had no knowledge of Wilma's whereabouts. He claimed that after they broke up, she had moved on to someone else. However, there was no evidence to support this, leaving her loved ones confused and worried. At the same time, Wilma's family revealed a heartbreaking story to the police, lamenting how their daughter's life had taken a drastic turn since she became involved with Tishko, creating a bleak contrast to her once vibrant and sociable self. Linda revealed that Tishko had complete control over her, constantly telling her what to do and monitoring her every move. Emily shared some disturbing information that Wilma had told her. It was clear that Tishko had become violent in their relationship. Despite the abuse, Wilma still had strong feelings for Tishko. Tishko's level of control was so extreme that he even attached a GPS tracking device to Wilma's phone, allowing him to know her location at all times. A series of text messages between Wilma and Tishko revealed a disturbing control in their relationship. An exchange from a previous argument showed that Wilma had asked Tishko to contact her when he felt he could trust her. As part of the investigation, police looked into Tishko's alibi for the time. Tishko claimed he had been in the apartment after returning from work at 5 p.m. To verify this, police tracked Tishko's movements using GPS tracking on his phone. Surveillance footage showed Tishko at the supermarket at 2:30 p.m. on the day Wilma went missing. He returned home from work at 5 p.m. Around 6 p.m., neighbors reported a loud and escalating argument between the couple, louder than their usual disagreements. A concerned neighbor decided to check on them but was met with an unsettling silence as they approached the apartment door. The sudden silence was unnerving, and the neighbor, not knowing what to do, returned to their apartment. Police continued to investigate Wilma's disappearance, carefully analyzing Tishko's activities. They expanded their search to his workplace and company vehicle, requesting forensic analysis. The car's GPS showed that he had been traveling from Thursday, the 14th, to Monday, the 18th. The GPS log showed that he visited clients and returned home during his regular work hours on those days. On the day of the dispute, Tishko's phone showed that he left his apartment at 6:30 p.m. Witnesses saw him walking along the highway, alone and dressed all in black. A motorcyclist described Tishko as deep in thought about something. Tishko was stopped by police and taken home. When questioned, Tishko said he had initially wanted to catch a train, but then changed his mind and walked home. Curiously, the police did not file a report after the encounter. On November 19, 2019, while the investigation was still ongoing, police noticed that he had visible scratches on his forearms. After obtaining a search warrant for his apartment, police found several of Wilma's belongings, including a handbag, jacket, shoes, and eyeglasses. Wilma's mother, Linda, said her daughter always carried the bag with her, making the discovery even more suspicious. Police examined the scene with Blue Star, a high-tech version of luminol. The results revealed ominous bloodstains on the walls and floors throughout the apartment, suggesting a violent struggle. As police reconstructed the events, a chilling story began to emerge. Bloodstains stretched from the living room to the bedroom, suggesting something, or someone, had been dragged. Even the bed bore a dark imprint, a haunting shape of a torso highlighted by the bright light of the blue star. Police also discovered muscle tissue on a knife and blood splatter on the living room wall. The large amount of blood found at the scene indicated a violent incident, making the possibility of survivors very low. When police searched outside the apartment, they discovered trash bags containing Tishko's bed sheets with blood stains on them. When questioned at the police station, Tishko denied knowing anything about the blood stains and said he would have noticed if there had been more blood in his house. As the search for Wilma continued, more and more people joined in, hoping to find her and provide a glimmer of hope amid the growing tragedy. The apartment where Wilma was last seen became a grim crime scene, but attempts to find her were unsuccessful. On November 28, 2 weeks after Wilma went missing, police brought in sniffer dogs to help search the crime scene. These specially trained dogs can detect the scent of a dead person. When they entered the bedroom, one of the dogs quickly indicated that there was a possibility of a corpse or human remains. The apartment was also filled with a distinct and unpleasant odor. Although the police had searched the bedroom before, they searched thoroughly again, focusing on the area the dogs had marked. They focused on a dresser, which appeared to be just another piece of furniture in the room, but inside the otherwise innocuous dresser was a small travel suitcase, which seemed inconspicuous among the other items in the room. After opening it, they discovered a large object wrapped in kitchen foil inside the suitcase. When they opened the foil, they were met with a horrifying and heartbreaking truth. Wilma's severed head had been carefully wrapped and tied with tape inside the foil. The travel case, containing evidence of Wilma's horrific events, was sent to the Gothenburg Forensic Laboratory for further examination. A detailed examination revealed Tishko's fingerprints, which linked him to the heinous act. The investigation revealed the shocking brutality of the crime. Although pathologists were unable to determine Wilma's exact cause of death, they discovered severe injuries to her head and eyes caused by blunt force trauma. The decapitation had also caused further head injuries. Wilma's family was devastated by her news. Her mother, Linda, joined the search efforts for the rest of Wilma's body. The family was confronted with horrifying details of the case, including evidence found on the walls of the apartment. It became clear that Wilma's final moments may have taken place in the living room, where she was violently attacked. A severe blow to the head ended her life, leaving a haunting reminder of the violence. Swedish police filed a report detailing Tishko's denial of Wilma's murder, strongly asserting his innocence. Despite Tishko's claims, police had enough evidence to charge him with the crime, and his trial was set for May 2020. However, Wilma's body was not found during the trial. Tishko showed no remorse or emotion throughout the investigation. Reports revealed that he had a disturbing view of his ex-girlfriend, associating her with evil and making bizarre claims that she was working with the Democrats against then U.S. President Donald Trump. Tishko's bizarre obsession with the president led him to attempt to join Trump's campaign. But his application was rejected due to incomplete records. During his trial, his defense team attempted to argue that he was not guilty by reason of insanity, citing his bizarre beliefs and statements about Wilma as evidence. However, this defense was unsuccessful. On July 27, 2020, a court found Tishko Ahmed Shirzad, 23, guilty of the murder of 17-year-old Wilma Anderson and sentenced him to life in prison, which was later reduced to 18 years by an appeals court. The inexplicable reduction in sentence stems from the lack of concrete evidence to pinpoint the exact cause of Wilma's death or the course of events, since her body was not there, a haunting absence that leaves important questions unanswered, hindering the pursuit of justice. In 2020, Wilma's funeral marked the sad end to her story, causing immense pain for her family. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rowena Irani. Rowena Irani was born in Karachi, Pakistan, on February 18, 1994. She was the daughter of Tarun and Bam Irani. When Rowena was 10 years old, her family moved to Wichita, Kansas, in search of better opportunities. Her parents made the decision to provide a brighter future for Rowena and her brother, Rashid, in the United States. However, the move was not an easy one. Despite this, Rowena overcame the initial challenges and became a determined, sociable, and compassionate young woman. In 2012, she graduated from Wichita Heights High School and later enrolled at Wichita State University. She's still living at home while pursuing a degree in psychology. Her dream was to earn a master's degree and become a youth counselor. Her mother was very proud of Rowena's hard work and dedication to her studies. From the beginning, the Irani family's sacrifices paid off for their children. In addition to her academic goals, Rowena wanted to serve her community and help other young people reach their full potential. She began working at the Wichita Children's Home, a shelter for abandoned, abused, and emotionally troubled youth. Rowena developed close relationships with the children in her care, demonstrating her admirable ability to empathize and support them. Rowena gently woke the children each morning and made sure to say goodbye to them in the evening. The children looked forward to sharing their daily experiences, no matter how small, with her after school. The CEO highlighted Rowena's attentive listening and genuine empathy for each child. She affirmed that the children deserved to be treated with kindness and understanding. Additionally, Rowena guided the children in setting goals and providing practical strategies to achieve them, demonstrating her dedication to their well-being. Rowena dedicated herself to helping troubled people. With an exceptional academic record as a psychologist, she discovered her happiness in helping others. In May 2016, Rowena ran into Dane Thomas Owens at her brother's wedding. Dane came from a wealthy Kansas family and had joined the United States Army after graduating from high school. Dane was abruptly terminated from her military service due to a severe traumatic brain injury sustained from an explosive device. After being medically discharged, Dane returned to Wichita and enrolled at Kansas State University while continuing her education, like Rowena. Rowena and Dane quickly developed a deep affection for each other. However, there were some worrying signs regarding Dane's possessive behavior, controlling tendencies, and impulsiveness. Rowena's family and friends were concerned that Dane was moving too quickly toward marriage and starting a family, although Rowena seemed hesitant. At 22, Rowena wanted to focus on finishing college before considering a serious commitment like marriage. Her boyfriend's urgency and determination to get married made Rowena feel anxious, and she believed that the relationship was moving too fast. When she asked for independence and time alone early in the relationship, Dane responded with a letter filled with misery and desperation, begging her not to leave him. He desperately stated that he could not live without her and hinted at the possibility of self-harm. Ultimately, she did not end the relationship. Initially, Dane seemed to accept Rowena's views when she stated that she was not ready to get married and start a family. However, after only a week, he began to relentlessly press for an engagement, a wedding, and a future family. His behavior increasingly suggests that he sees Rowena as a target to be conquered rather than treating her as a girlfriend. He seems determined to keep her in a family role rather than supporting her in her academic and career endeavors. This imbalance in the relationship causes Rowena to become extremely anxious and doubtful about their compatibility. Why? In September 2016, Rowena observed an increase in Dane's violent behavior and felt compelled to share her concerns with her brother, Rashid, who was a police officer. Rowena recounted several disturbing incidents, including Dane's boasting about the brutal murders he claimed to have committed while serving in the military, such as killing women and children while deployed in Afghanistan. These revelations left Rowena deeply disturbed. Even more troubling was Dane's admission of his intention to kill a girl he had dated. He confessed that after being dumped, he had become vengeful and unstable, seriously considering murdering his ex. Rashid agreed that Dane posed a real threat and warned that he might commit acts of violence against the girl. On September 23, after a disagreement about ending the relationship, Rowena decided to permanently end her relationship with Dane Owens and cease all contact with him. She blocked his phone number and social media profiles, hoping to avoid the emotionally abusive and disturbing behavior she had previously tolerated. However, instead of accepting Rowena's decision, her ex-boyfriend began plotting his revenge. Although Dane was still recovering from recent shoulder surgery and unable to properly operate a gun, he became emotionally overwhelmed and purchased a .45 caliber handgun on October 3, more than a week after their breakup. Dane arrived at Rowena's home in a stealthy and unexpected manner while the rest of her family was away. Surveillance cameras captured him parking his car away from the Irani family home before approaching in broad daylight. He attempted to conceal the illegal gun by strapping it to his arm, which was in a sling. Dane broke into Rowena's home without her knowledge. Upon encountering her, he shot and killed her without warning. This act of violence and cruelty was not motivated by passion, but rather was a calculated and deliberate act of a pathological person. After brutally attacking Rowena, Dane quickly fled the scene through the rear exit of the house and drove away in a hurry to avoid arrest. Along the way, he stopped to dispose of vital evidence in several ponds throughout the Wichita area, including a pistol magazine and Rowena's cell phone. Meanwhile, Rowena was left alone, severely injured, and bleeding profusely in the house for hours. Around 4 p.m., Rowena's mother, Tarun, finished off work. Tarun was confused because Rowena had not picked her up as usual and was unable to contact her daughter. A short time later, a co-worker of Tarun's drove her home. When Tarun entered the house, she was confronted with a horrifying scene: Rowena lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by blood and with a severe head injury. Tarun frantically called emergency services, but Rowena's injuries were too severe. Rowena's condition became critical after being shot and losing a significant amount of blood. She fought for her life for nearly 24 agonizing hours at Wesley Medical Center while her family remained by her side, hoping for a miracle. However, the worst happened. Rowena passed away on October 4th at the age of 22, ending a promising life in a senseless act of violence. Rowena's family was devastated by her death, but they were determined to find justice. Rashid quickly directed investigators to focus on the person who needed to be investigated, Rowena's ex-boyfriend, Dane Owens. In the final days of her life, Rowena had been subjected to fear and oppression from Dane. Therefore, finding and questioning Dane became a priority for investigators. When arrested and brought to the police station, Dane confessed that he harbored resentment toward Rowena for ending their relationship. During intense questioning, he attempted to explain himself with his version of events. He claimed that Rowena's death was an accident, a blatant lie that was completely inconsistent with the evidence gathered. According to his testimony to investigators, Dane stated that he went to Rowena's home to discuss mending their broken relationship, hoping for a happy ending. He admitted to visiting unannounced and carrying a loaded .45 caliber handgun, but did not explain why he had the weapon. However, Dane claimed that the gun was hidden in his wristband and that he had no intention of threatening or harming Rowena. When Dane entered the home looking for her, he said Rowena suddenly turned the corner, startling him. In a defensive response, due to his PTSD from serving in the military, he alleged that he accidentally fired the gun at Rowena in that moment of panic. He told detectives that he witnessed the moment the bullet accidentally hit Rowena in the head, causing her to fall to the ground. He was so distraught after the accident that he fled the scene and then disposed of the evidence. Although he claimed that the shooting was an accident triggered by his combat experience, detectives believed that was a clumsy lie. There is a strong body of evidence indicating that the murder was a carefully planned and premeditated act committed by Dane seeking revenge. This includes security footage from the crime scene, his confession of approaching Rowena surreptitiously with a loaded gun, his attempts to conceal evidence, and, most notably, the execution-style gunshot wound to the head. In November 2018, Dane Owens finally went to trial to face charges of brutally murdering Rowena after years of frustrating delays. The prosecution presented a strong and compelling case, with a significant amount of direct evidence. They built a narrative that portrayed Dane as controlling and possessive, often resorting to violence when faced with rejections, which ultimately led to Rowena's death. After deliberating for just 3 hours, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, finding Dane guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated burglary. In Kansas, these charges automatically carry a life sentence. Dane was punished for cruelly taking away Rowena's promising life because his own self-esteem was hurt. He will have to wait at least 25 years before he can be considered for parole. However, due to the brutal nature of his crimes, his chances of obtaining parole are slim. He is currently incarcerated in a holding cell at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility in Hutchinson, Kansas, according to official court documents. When we reflect on the tragic events surrounding Rowena Irani, we are confronted with the painful truth about domestic violence and its terrible consequences. Rowena's life was cut short by the actions of someone she loved. We must come together to support victims of domestic violence and hold perpetrators accountable for their actions. Rowena's story serves as an important reminder that love should never be accompanied by fear or violence. We hope that she will be remembered and that her story inspires efforts to build equal, respectful relationships and create a safe world where everyone is valued. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Megan Landowski. Located on the shores of the Chesapeake Bay in Portsmouth, Virginia, is a bustling seaport town that is also home to both the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. The town's tree-lined streets are home to naval officers and their families. Among them is Navy officer Chris Short, his wife Angela, and 3 stepchildren, Elizabeth, Megan, and Corey. After a year stationed at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Chris was transferred to a naval hospital in Portsmouth, much to his family's delight. 16-year-old Megan, the eldest of the siblings, was excited to start her new life in Portsmouth. She promptly signed up for dance classes, as she had a strong passion for dance. Megan had a natural ability and quickly excelled in various dance styles, starting with ballet. Her mother, Angela, described Megan as a lovely, friendly, and talented young woman who easily settled into her new school, Woodrow Wilson High School. Megan was a lively and kind person, and that helped her swiftly made friends at her prestigious dance high school. However, she longed to attend a regular high school to be with her neighborhood friends. On Thursday, April 10, 2008, Megan woke up early for school and had a conversation with her mother about an upcoming test. They said their goodbyes, and Megan headed off to class. Unbeknownst to her mother, Angela, this would be the last time she saw her daughter alive. Megan's school day finished earlier than usual, so she headed home. Her mother had asked her to call as soon as she arrived. When Megan got home, she left a voicemail for her mother, telling her all about her day, letting her know she was safe, and saying she loved her. After that, Megan started making herself some lunch. However, the situation took a devastating turn around 4 p.m. that day. Chris, Megan's stepfather, came home to find the front door open. At first, he wasn't too worried, knowing Megan had been reminded to keep it closed. But he planned to remind her again. As he called out her name while walking through the house, he was met with only silence. As he entered the kitchen, he was met with a horrific scene. Megan was lying lifeless on the floor, a victim of murder. Chris later described the scene, saying Megan looked like a porcelain doll, eerily still and staring blankly into space. Local detective Doug Funkhauser was on his way to celebrate his anniversary with his wife when he received a distressing call about the murder of a young girl in town. He rushed to the scene, where he was met with a shocking and disturbing sight. As he neared the house, he noticed blood stains on the door handle. Inside, he found Megan's body on the kitchen floor, partially naked and surrounded by a large pool of blood. She had multiple stab wounds on her back, neck, face, and throat, and her mouth was sealed shut with tape. As a seasoned investigator, Detective Doug had seen many brutal cases, but this one stood out due to the victim's young age. The fact that he had 3 children of his own made him even more determined to catch the perpetrator and bring them to justice. Investigators found no signs that the killer had broken into the house. However, a leaf found inside the house, which matched the bush outside the first-floor window, suggested that the attacker entered through that window. The assault is believed to have started in an upstairs bedroom. Signs of a struggle were evident, with the bed in disarray. On the floor, police found Megan's underwear. An adhesive tape box discovered under the bed was matched to the tape used to restrain Megan's arms and cover her face. Bloodstains on the tape were collected for further analysis. Additionally, pillows, sheets, and blankets from the bed were collected for forensic examination. Further investigation of the bedroom revealed new evidence. Seminal fluid was found on the duvet and in Megan's underwear, indicating that she had been sexually assaulted before being brutally murdered. Downstairs, Megan sustained 43 stab wounds, 11 of which were inflicted after she had already died. Her body was discovered naked from the waist down, with her arms bound behind her back using tape. The forensic team quickly identified a murder weapon when they noticed 2 knife was missing from its holder on the kitchen counter. Later, a knife was found in the sink. It was determined that Megan was first attacked in her room but managed to escape downstairs, where she was fatally assaulted. The perpetrator then moved through the house, leaving footprints behind. After washing their hands in the sink, they left one of the 2 knives used in the murder. The other knife, taken from the kitchen, was found in a nearby storm drain. Detectives urgently needed to catch the killer. They quickly started investigating, thoroughly searching the neighborhood for witnesses who may have seen or heard something suspicious during the crime. However, no one came forward with any relevant information. It seemed the perpetrator had escaped in broad daylight. The town was gripped with fear, as parents worried about their children's safety, and many were too afraid to sleep at night knowing a killer was still at large. After the initial shock of their daughter's murder, Angela and Chris quickly told the police who they suspected was responsible. They accused Robert Hickey, someone they used to know, who had a troubled past, and they were confident in their accusation. When Megan was 16, she was sexually assaulted by Robert Hickey, a Navy colleague of her stepfather Chris. Robert and Chris worked together as technicians and had become close friends. Chris and his family would often invite the Robert over. After being sexually assaulted, Megan became withdrawn and her grades started to slip. Chris noticed the change in her and asked what was wrong, but Megan was hesitant to talk about it at first. Eventually, she opened up to Chris and told him that Robert had been secretly assaulting her. Chris was furious and disgusted. He immediately cut off all ties with the Robert family and reported the incidents. 5 months before her murder, Megan's parents had started legal proceedings against Robert, and a trial was pending. Now, they suspected that Robert had killed Megan to prevent her from testifying against him in court. They thought he was afraid of damaging his reputation and going to prison. Megan had even expressed her fear that Robert would come after her, and sadly, it seemed her fears had come true. Officers went to Robert's home to search for evidence linking him to a murder. Although they didn't find any direct evidence, a later examination of his computer, they discovered he had deleted some data. A deleted file was recovered, containing illicit images of minors, which led to Robert being charged with possessing child pornography. This made him the main suspect in the murder investigation. When questioned about the murder, Robert appeared nervous but claimed he was at the Navy base all day. He denied any involvement and said he didn't leave the base. However, after checking his alibi with colleagues, police found a gap in his timeline, suggesting he could have been suspect. Security footage was checked, but it showed that Robert had not left the base. Despite this, he was still considered a suspect and could not be completely cleared of suspicion. A DNA sample was collected from Robert to compare with the DNA found at the crime scene. However, the results revealed that there was no match, ruling Robert out as Megan's killer. This unexpected outcome left the officers disheartened, as they were now without leads or suspects other. The focus then shifted to Chris, who had discovered Megan's body. After collecting a DNA sample, Chris was quickly cleared as a suspect. Megan's family members, including her younger brother Corey, were also eliminated as suspects. An autopsy showed that Megan was murdered with extreme brutality, described as an overkill. This level of violence indicated that the perpetrator was fueled by intense anger, which raised questions about their motive. Megan was well-liked and didn't appear to have any enemies. It seemed likely that the killer was someone she knew. However, the lack of obvious enemies made it even more puzzling as to who could have committed such a horrific crime. As the investigation continued without identifying any suspects, Megan's parents were faced with the disturbing reality that her case may remain unsolved forever, denying them justice for their daughter. To search new leads, detectives looked into Megan's school life, looking into whether she might have had a secret boyfriend, someone who admired her, or an enemy within her school. They questioned one of Megan's close friends, hoping to gain useful information, but the friend couldn't provide any significant details. The police then spoke with other people from Woodrow Wilson High School who knew Megan. They discovered that she had been in a few romantic relationships, but none of them were serious. Although none of these individuals seemed suspicious, but the police still took DNA samples from these people for further investigation. Forensic experts analyzed DNA evidence from the crime scene to determine the perpetrator's geographical origin. The results suggested that the perpetrator was an African-American male. After 6 months with no significant leads, a classmate provided a list of boys Megan had flirted with. The police reviewed the list and found that all the individuals, except one, had already been interviewed. The exception was 17-year-old Robert Lee Barnes. Megan had met Barnes through a performance arts program at Churchill High School, where they both participated. Megan had told a friend that she thought Barnes had feelings for her, but she didn't feel the same way. Barnes was a talented violinist and a diligent student with no disciplinary issues. He was friends with Megan and had visited her home several times. Her parents described him as polite and kind. When questioned by police, Barnes followed the standard procedure and described Megan as kind. Initially, the police interview with Robert did not raise any suspicions. However, when asked if he would be willing to provide a DNA sample, Robert hesitated, then he refusing. This refusal was unusual, as all of Megan's other classmates had agreed to cooperate. When questioned about his refusal, Robert explained that his mother would not approve of him providing a DNA sample. The police clarified that, as he's 17 years old, Robert did not need his mother's consent. Nevertheless, Robert declined again, leaving the investigators with the feeling that something was not quite right about him. At the end of the interview, Robert was requested to obtain his mother's consent for the DNA sample and to contact the investigators afterward. The next day, Robert requested a meeting with the investigators. When asked if he had obtained his mother's consent, he replied that he had not. However, he offered to provide a DNA sample in the form of the bubble gum he was chewing. He removed the gum from his mouth, placed it in a latex glove, and handed it over to the investigators. Despite this, the investigators continued to suspect that Robert might be hiding something. Later on, the detective got a call from the lab that was analyzing the bubble gum. The lab asked where the gum had come from. After the detective confirmed that he saw Barnes put the gum into the glove, the lab asked if Barnes was under constant watch. This was surprisingly, because the DNA on the gum belonged to a female. It turned out that Barnes had switched the gum he was chewing with a different piece, which he then gave as his sample. On October 23, 2008, Barnes was brought in for questioning again, this time with his mother. The police wanted to confront him with the DNA results. During the interview, after being questioned about the gum, Barnes made a slip of the tongue by saying, "This happened on Thursday." Up to that point, no individual interviewed by police knew the exact date and time of the murder. When questioned about this by the police, Barnes gave a very unreasonable and suspicious explanation. He said that Megan had invited him to her home. Upon arrival, he found her being held at gunpoint by a masked person. According to Barnes, the attacker then pointed the gun at him and forced him to tie Megan up. Barnes further said that he was forced to sexually assault Megan against his will. He then stated that they all went downstairs, where the assailant seized a knife and stabbed Megan. Additionally, Barnes stated that the attacker compelled him to inflict an injury on himself, thereby leaving his blood at the scene. However, Barnes had made up this story to make himself appear as a victim and explain away any evidence that might implicate him. The police were not convinced by his story and do not believe any of his testimony. Police presented Barnes with evidence of footprints found at the scene, noting that only his footprints were present, with no sign of the alleged assailant's footprints. However, before Barnes could respond, his mother interrupted, defending his character and stating that he was a good and innocent kid. However, after taking a DNA sample from Barnes and analyzing it, the results revealed a match between his DNA and DNA evidence from the crime scene, contradicting his claims of innocence. Consequently, Robert Lee Barnes was arrested and charged with the murder of Megan Landowski. Megan's parents were shocked by the news, and they struggled to understand how the quiet boy who rode the school bus with their daughter could commit such a violent act. According to the police investigation, Barnes likely entered the home through a window that afternoon, sexually assaulted Megan in her bedroom, finally brutally killing her. Megan managed to escape downstairs, but Barnes chased after her and stabbed her multiple times with a kitchen knife, even after she had died. He then left the scene and continued with his life as if nothing had happened. Investigators believe that Barnes had become fixated on Megan, who only wanted a friendship. When Megan rejected his advances, Barnes became coercive and violent, ultimately leading to a tragic outcome. In September 2009, Barnes accepted a plea deal that allowed him to avoid being tried as an adult, despite having turned 18. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated sexual battery. Robert Lee Barnes was sentenced to 42 years in prison and is currently serving his sentence at Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia. Regardless of whether Barnes was motivated by love, desire, anger, or rejection, nothing justifies his heinous actions. Instead of moving on, Barnes chose a dark path that led to a tragic end. This choice not only took an innocent life but also destroyed his own and hurt the people who Megan's loved ones. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alexandria Koschel. Alexandria Koschel. Born on September 11, 1997 in St. Louis, Missouri, Alexandria, commonly known as Ally, is the adorable daughter of Cindy and Keith and has an older brother named Andrew. Alexandria has a friendly and approachable personality. From a young age, Alexandria's bright smile and warm personality attracted people. As she grew up, Alexandria's positive energy spread a positive life to those around her. She spends time with her friends, classmates, and family members. Alexandria's ability to connect with people from all walks of life is truly remarkable. Alexandria is a charming and compassionate person who always helps those in need. She attended Lindbergh High School, where she developed her passion for athletics. During high school, Alexandria met her best friend, Maddie Norris, and they formed a close bond and friendship that grew into a deep and trusting sisterly bond. Alexandria and Maddie shared a passion for exploring life and trying new experiences. Together, they faced challenges, laughed, and made lasting memories. During their time together, they enjoyed afternoons spent watching movies. One of their favorite movies was Legally Blonde. Once Alexandria got her driver's license, she and Maddie often drove around town in Alexandria's convertible. As their senior year approached, Alexandria still had no date for the upcoming prom. Although a few guys had asked her out, she had never had a serious relationship or boyfriend. Feeling frustrated, she considered skipping the event. However, Maddie asked to be Alexandria's dance partner at the prom. Alexandria was deeply moved, and so Alexandria wore a beautiful red dress to the prom. After graduating from high school, Alexandria made her dream of attending the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi come true. She was drawn to the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, because of its large student body. An avid sports fan, she was especially impressed by the school's renowned football program. In 2006, Alexandria began her freshman year at Ole Miss, where she majored in marketing and business. While at Ole Miss, Alexandria joined a sorority and became one of its founding members. She is also president of the Ole Miss Golf Club. Alexandria, with a strong passion for sunsets, she took to taking pictures to capture their beauty, with the aim of sharing this beauty with the world. Alexandria created an Instagram account to showcase her beautiful sunset photos. One night, while at a bar in downtown Oxford, Alexandria met Brandon Theld, a charming young man from Fort Worth, Texas. She was immediately attracted to him and invited him to several sorority dances. Over time, Alexandria's feelings for Brandon grew. Born into a loving Christian family, Brandon had a fulfilling childhood, with his father being a prominent doctor in Fort Worth. Growing up, Brandon had a classic Texas childhood filled with activities like hunting, fishing, and soccer. Alexandria's love of the outdoors made him eager to participate in a variety of outdoor activities. During school breaks, Alexandria's best friend Maddie from St. Louis visited Alexandria in Oxford, Mississippi. According to Alexandria, Maddie was excited to see Brandon. However, during Maddie's time there, Brandon did not come to visit and see Alexandria's deceased best friend. This left her heartbroken. Maddie witnessed Alexandria's sadness and felt sorry for her friend. Despite her trauma, Alexandria remained strong and focused on her studies at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria had a great first year, with high grades, new friends, and a strong sense of humor. The summer of 2019, right before Alexandria's senior year, was a time of great anticipation for Alexandria and her parents, Cindy and Keith. They were all looking forward to her senior year at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria's parents decided to visit her at Oxford University for a few days. They were happy to see how quickly their daughter adjusted to her new surroundings. At the time, Alexandria was busy teaching a gym class and attending summer school. When her parents arrived, Alexandria gave them a tour of the campus, showing them her favorite spots in town. The visit gave her parents, Cindy and Keith, the opportunity to see firsthand how their daughter has grown and be proud of all she has accomplished. Cindy, her mother, cooks Alexandria's favorite dinner. During the meal, they shared fond memories. Alexandria's parents had originally planned to return home to St. Louis, but she asked them to stay an extra day so they could experience more of what Oxford had to offer. Cindy and Keith agreed to extend their stay. On July 19th, after returning home, her parents called Alexandria around 7 p.m. She answered the phone, still sleepy from her nap, and explained to her mother that she planned to go out with friends that evening. Cindy told her daughter that she loved Alexandria and hung up. Little did she know that would be the last time she would speak to her daughter. Sardis Lake is a large recreational area 30 minutes from Oxford that has many hunting camps. The area is large and is patrolled by the local police department for safety. On June 20th, 2019, a police officer began patrolling Sardis Lake early in the morning. As the officer drove around the lake, he noticed near a picnic table the body of a young woman lying on the ground. The officer was shocked by the discovery and immediately called for help. Other officers and paramedics arrived on the scene a few minutes later. Upon arrival, the officer found a wallet in a nearby ditch. When the wallet was opened, it contained an Old Miss school ID and a driver's license identifying the owner as Alexandria Koschel. Later, after the discovery of Alexandria's body at Sardis Lake, the police had to notify her parents, Cindy and Keith. However, they were away from home in St. Louis at the time. Her mother was devastated when she heard the news about her daughter. The news of Alexandria's death shocked her friends as well as her parents. Alexandria's friends turned to social media, using the hashtag #JusticeForAllie, to express their grief and demand justice for her. They share fond memories of Alexandria in social media posts, talking about the positive impact she had on their lives. And her friends sent their condolences to her family. Following the tragic death of Alexandria, we express our deepest condolences to the Alexandria family during this extremely difficult time. At the crime scene near Sardis Lake, police found White Claw water bottles and .40 caliber shell casings on the ground. A ballistics expert was called in to analyze the scene and piece together the events surrounding Alexandria's murder. The expert determined that the killer was initially sitting across from Alexandria on a picnic bench when they fired the first shots. However, after the first shot, the killer stood up and began walking around the table toward Alexandria, firing multiple shots as they approached. One bullet missed Alexandria and struck the wooden picnic table. While searching for evidence, police searched Alexandria's apartment but did not find her phone. However, they discovered that Alexandria's Apple Watch had some unexpected syncs with her text messages the night before she was killed. When they examined the messages, they discovered that Alexandria had been having lengthy conversations with Brandon Thade. The messages revealed that Alexandria and Brandon had planned to meet before she was killed. Police investigating Alexandria's murder contacted Brandon on Sunday morning to ask to meet at the police station. However, Brandon declined the invitation that day but agreed to meet the next day at 8:30 a.m. Monday. On Monday, Brandon failed to show up at the police station as scheduled, prompting police to trace his cell phone. Cell phone data showed that Brandon was traveling south on Interstate 55 toward Memphis, leading police to suspect that he was trying to flee. As a result, they issued an arrest warrant and alert for his vehicle, which was easily identifiable due to its unique license plate. 2 hours after the warrant was issued for Brandon, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force located his vehicle at a gas station. Brandon was found sitting in his vehicle at a gas pump, where task force agents arrested him and notified Mississippi police. When police searched Brandon's vehicle, they discovered a .40 caliber handgun. Brandon's clothing was also found to be covered in blood after he exited the vehicle. After his arrest and return to Mississippi, police began tracking Brandon in the days leading up to the Alexandria murders. On Saturday, July 20th, Brandon visited friends and went bowling. The next day, Brandon visited another friend, bringing a 6-pack of beer and the same .40 caliber handgun found in his vehicle. The friend reported that they talked for a while, but when the friend woke up on Monday, Brandon was no longer there. Brandon's background check did not reveal any history of violence or altercations. Interviews with friends and family members of both Brandon and Alexandria provided detailed information about the couple's history. They met at a local bar in Oxford during their freshman year and initially began dating. However, their relationship declined during their sophomore year. Notably, Alexandria's loved ones noticed a change in her demeanor, as she seemed to be more invested in the relationship than Brandon. This imbalance led to tension between the two. Brandon eventually blocked Alexandria from contacting him because she frequently went out at night, drank, and then called him. A year after their breakup, Brandon and Alexandria got back together the summer before Alexandria's senior year. They decided to rekindle their relationship. However, the reunion did not last long. Brandon was eventually charged with Alexandria's murder, specifically premeditated murder, which carries the death penalty. When news of Brandon's arrest spread, it caused widespread shock and attracted intense media attention in Oxford. The community was caught up in speculation and rumors as people shared their theories about the case. Reporters descended on the town, seeking interviews with people close to Alexandria and Brandon. In September 2019, Brandon pleaded not guilty to murder. As police continued to gather evidence, they reviewed text messages exchanged between Brandon and Alexandria before her murder. The messages revealed that Alexandria was concerned that she might be pregnant in April 2019, 3 months before her death. On April 14th, Alexandria sent Brandon a photo of a home pregnancy test result. He made it clear that they would not keep the baby and suggested that they could buy abortion pills. Alexandria, however, did not want an abortion, and she thought that she would meet someone who would love her and her child. Despite this, Brandon was adamantly against having a child, telling Alexandria that it would ruin his life. Police also discovered surveillance footage that showed Alexandria leaving a bar in Oxford Square at around 11:45 p.m. on July 18th. About an hour later, at 1:30 a.m., Alexandria met Brandon and he drove them to Sardis Lake. Brandon's defense attorney claimed that he and Alexandria had been drinking throughout the day. At Sardis Lake, they sat at a picnic table and listened to music. Brandon then got up and walked to his truck, where he used drugs. He walked back to Alexandria, returned to his truck, and retrieved a .40 caliber gun. By the time Brandon retrieved his gun, there had been a shooting on the other side of the lake. After the incident, Brandon and Alexandria continued to talk, but the situation became heated, and Brandon shot her. According to the defense, Brandon's actions were influenced by the combined effects of drugs and alcohol. The police and Alexandria's family saw the incident from a different perspective. They believed that Brandon killed Alexandria because he suspected she was pregnant, which he believed would ruin his life. To them, the murder appeared premeditated. Brandon agreed to a plea deal with state police on August 27, 2021, avoiding the death penalty. Under the deal, Brandon admitted to first-degree murder and received a life sentence without parole. Alexandria's loved ones attended the hearing. Brandon addressed Alexandria's family after the sentencing, expressing remorse for his actions and asking for their forgiveness. He acknowledged the great pain he had caused and hoped they could find forgiveness in their hearts. Although Alexandria's autopsy report showed that she was not pregnant at the time of her death, her mother, Cindy, believes that Alexandria was pregnant and lost the baby. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Sherry Papini. Keith Papini and Sherry first met in junior high, when he was in 7th grade and she was in 8th grade. Their friendship quickly blossomed and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, over time, they lost contact with each other and went separate ways. Sherry eventually moved on and married another man in 2006, but their marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherry found herself single once again. Unbeknownst to her, a chance encounter with Keith was on the horizon, and their reunion would rekindle the spark they had long ago. This unexpected reunion revealed the growth and maturity that time apart had brought them. They discovered how much they had missed each other and decided to give their relationship a second chance. As they started dating, their connection grew stronger with each passing day. Within a year of reuniting, Keith and Sherry realized they were meant to be together. In 2009, they got married and had 2 children, and lived in Reading, California. To care for her children, Sherry left her job in telecommunications, and Keith continued working at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. Keith and Sherry Papini had what seemed like the perfect life to those around them. However, their seemingly idyllic life took a drastic turn on November 2, 2016, when Keith returned home from work to find his wife, Sherry, missing. Normally, Sherry was at home when Keith arrived, but she was nowhere to be found this time. Keith initially thought Sherry might have gone for a walk, but as the minutes ticked by with no sign of her return, his concern grew. He decided to call their children's daycare center to see if Sherry had picked up the kids. To his surprise and concern, the school secretary told him that Sherry had not been there. Keith then decided to track Sherry's phone using the Find My iPhone app. The app showed that her phone was located at the end of their driveway. Keith immediately ran outside and began searching. To his dismay, he found Sherry's phone lying on the ground, along with her headphones. What's more, he discovered strands of hair tangled in the headphones. Distraught, Keith quickly contacted the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office acted quickly and treated Sherry's disappearance as a serious matter from the very beginning, they bringing in the FBI to assist with the investigation. Keith is determined to find his wife and bring her home safely. To achieve this, he has asked for the public's assistance. Keith contacted the media to help spread the word about Sherry's disappearance, they sharing her story by covering every detail of her case. As a result, the public became deeply interested in Sherry's disappearance, largely due to her striking appearance and the seemingly ideal life she led. As the story gained media attention, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office started receiving numerous tips from the public. However, these information do not assist in finding Sherry. In their investigation, police examined Sherry's phone for clues. Upon reviewing the phone's contents, investigators found a heated text message exchange between Sherry and Keith from a few months earlier. This discovery raised suspicions about Keith's involvement in Sherry's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Keith cooperated with the police investigation and even volunteered to take a polygraph test to clear his name. The test results showed that Keith was telling the truth. Aside from the text message exchange between Keith and Sherry, investigators found several messages on Sherry's phone from men using fake female names. Further examination suggested that Sherry was preparing to leave Keith. On November 10, 2016, the police located one of these men and questioned him about Sherry's location. He reported meeting Sherry 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work event. Although he claimed to have no knowledge of her whereabouts, he did offer some insight into her marriage to Keith. He shared that she had confided in him about her fear of her husband, Keith, due to his violent behavior. He claimed Keith often confined Sherry to their home. The police opened an investigation into Keith's behavior to verify these allegations. However, after questioning friends and neighbors, they found no concrete evidence supporting Keith's portrayal as a violent person. Friends of the couple shared a different perspective. They described Sherry as attention-seeking and has a tendency to overreact. This new information led the police to consider that Sherry might have exaggerated or fabricated about being abused by her husband. On Thanksgiving morning, just days after Sherry went missing, police received a call for help at 4:32 a.m. The caller reported a woman on the side of I-5 who seemed to need assistance. Officers quickly are present to the scene and found a woman bound by chains and zip ties. Due to her disheveled state, it took a moment for them to identify the woman as Sherry. The officers were relieved to find Sherry alive. They carefully removed her chains and zip ties to ensure her safety. After her release, the officers took Sherry to the hospital for medical attention. It was at the hospital that the full extent of Sherry's ordeal became clear. She had multiple bruises, her hair had been cut short, and she had a burn mark on her arm. Additionally, she had a severe rash and had lost a significant amount of weight, dropping to just 87 pounds. Sherry was interviewed at Woodland Memorial Hospital while recovering, but she was too distraught to share any details without her husband present. Her husband, Keith, was allowed to stay with her during the interview. According to Sherry, she was jogging when a dark-colored SUV approached. The vehicle was driven by two women. The older woman, who had a gun, got out of the car and approached Sherry, while the younger woman stayed in the vehicle. Sherry stated she was forced into the SUV. Before getting in, Sherry left her phone, headphones, and some of her hair behind in the driveway. She intentionally left clues for Keith in case anything went wrong. During the journey in the SUV, Sherry said she drifted in and out of sleep, making it difficult to keep track of time. The women also covered Sherry's face, preventing her from seeing the direction or location she was being taken. Sherry reported that her captors, two women, told her that she was taken because a man wanted to buy her. However, the women did not provide any information about the man's identity or his location. As a result, Sherry felt unease and fear, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. During her testimony, Sherry also claimed to have experienced physical abuse from one of the captors. She alleged that this woman physically hit her many times, causing various injuries. She stated that she was branded on her right shoulder with the word Exodus, which would reportedly make her more appealing to her buyer. Sherry's captors played Mexican mariachi music constantly, of discomfort for Sherry. Throughout her captivity, Sherendra was confined to a small room with boarded-up window. Sherry described the basic but unsanitary and uncomfortable living conditions. In the closet, where she was chained, there was a bucket for her to use for both bowel movements and urination. Approximately 3 weeks after being in captivity, Sherry heard the sound of a gunshot. After that, she never saw the older Hispanic woman again. The other captor, who had been known to remain silent, now communicated more and ordered Sherry into a car, then driven along Interstate I-5. Car suddenly came to a stop, catching Sherry off guard. Startled, she looked around, and was then instructed by kidnapper to exit the vehicle. Sherry carefully got out of the car, feeling both frightened and hopeful. Was this her chance to escape, or was she being led into a more dangerous situation? Without any clear answers, she was left with deep uncertainty. After Sherry's rescue from the side of Interstate 5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce her safe return. During the conference, authorities revealed that Sherry had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women. Unfortunately, this has sparked a wave of racism against Hispanics. In the aftermath of her abduction, Sherry began attending therapy sessions to cope with her ordeal. Fortunately, as a California resident, she became eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses state budget to help pay for victims' therapy in the aftermath of the abduction. Sherry has changed her life, giving up her outgoing personality and limiting her social interactions. She now spends most of her time indoors, instead of participating in many of the social activities she once enjoyed. The police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women suspected to be involved in Sherry's abduction about a year into the investigation. However, no new information or leads were received. The police also disclosed that they found male DNA on Sherry's underwear, the same one she was wearing when she was found on the side of the I-5. Authorities confirmed that the DNA did not belong to Sherry's husband, Keith. 2 years after her abduction, the police were still unable to find a match for the male DNA on Sherry's underwear. And the case remained unresolved. In 2020, a significant development took place in the investigation of Sherry's case. The police responsible for her case applied for approval to utilize a new technology called familial DNA analysis, which involves examining DNA profiles to pinpoint possible relatives of the person who contributed the DNA. Familial DNA testing is a crucial tool in solving crimes. It works by comparing DNA evidence to the DNA of known individuals, usually family members of a suspect, to see if there's a match. To aid in the investigation, researchers use genetic markers shared among relatives to narrow down the pool of suspects. In the Sherry Papini case, the police have found new clues when they matched male DNA found on her underwear to family member James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend. This unexpected result led to numerous questions and changed the direction of the investigation. As a result, the police began to suspect Sherry's ex-boyfriend of being involved in her abduction. To investigate further, the police collected a soda bottle from James's trash and sent it to the forensic lab for DNA analysis in June 2020. The lab then compared the DNA from the soda bottle to the DNA sample found on Sherry's underwear. 1 month later, the lab confirmed that James Reyes was a match to the DNA sample discovered on Sherry's panties the day she was found. The police interviewed James at his home in Costa Mesa, California, about the disappearance of his former girlfriend, Sherry. James stated that he had dated Sherry about 10 years ago and last saw her a year after their breakup. When asked if he was involved in her kidnapping, James initially denied any involvement. However, as the interview progressed, James revealed that he was still close friends with Sherry. He said he was involved in Sherry's disappearance but didn't kidnap her. Instead, he just helped her. According to James, Sherry had contacted him about escaping her abusive husband, Keith. To help her, James arranged for a car, which was rented by one of his friends on November 2, 2016. James used that vehicle to pick up Sherry the next day. Sherry stayed in the back seat of the car during the long drive to James' house in Costa Mesa, lying down the entire time. Once they arrived, Sherry isolated herself in the bedroom for the remainder of her stay. James continued with his daily routine, while Sherry occasionally helped out by cleaning and cooking. During her stay, Sherry started dieting to lose weight. She also asked James to help her harm herself on purpose. Her requests included creating bruises by hitting herself. Sherry asked James to hit her knee with a hockey puck. At first, James was hesitant, but he eventually agreed to her requests. Furthermore, James stated that Sherry asked him to brand the word Exodus onto her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool from Hobby Lobby. James admitted to complying with this request as well. Eventually, Sherry informed James that she had decided to leave his house. Before departing, she requested that James obtain chains and zip ties. Sherry then instructed James drove her back to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherry ordered James to pull over, and he complied. She immediately exited the vehicle, and James drove away. When questioned by the police, James claimed he had no knowledge of the incident Sherry described, involving two Hispanic women. However, when the police visited James's house, they were startled by what they found. The layout of several rooms matched the descriptions Sherry had provided, including James' bedroom and closet, which exactly matched a drawing Sherry had created for the police. Several days later, the police met with Sherry and Keith at the police station. During the interview, the police had evidence that suggested Sherry had faked her own kidnapping, and they were prepared to confront her about it. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherry if she wanted her husband Keith to leave the room. However, Sherry remained silent. The police decided to leave Sherry and Keith alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherry shared a secret with Keith. Sherry told her husband that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who kidnapped her because she felt grateful to the woman for letting her go. As a result, she had no intention of pressing charges against the woman. Keith listened to his wife's explanation but became concerned and scared as her words made no sense to him. He pointed out that even if Sherry chose not to press charges, the woman would still face consequences for her actions. The police then re-entered the room and shared a crucial piece of information. They had obtained a DNA match for the male DNA found on Sherry's clothing. That DNA belongs to James Reyes, his wife's ex-boyfriend. Then, the police informed Sherry and Keith that James had passed a polygraph test, suggesting James was telling the truth. The police believed that Sherry might have faked her abduction, and they claimed to have gathered evidence supporting James' version of what happened. According to the police, they also told Sherry that they had discovered information that suggested her weight loss during her disappearance was intentional. Additionally, they believed the rash on her arms could have been caused by the cleaning products she used at James's home. The investigation into Sherry's kidnapping progressed when police discovered that she had staged the incident. The police found evidence that James had indeed inflicted the injuries on Sherry, on her own accord, contradicting her claim that she hadn't seen him since their breakup years ago. Specifically, police claimed to have discovered that James had used a wooden object purchased from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherry. They also discovered that Sherry's broken nose was the result of self-inflicted injuries with a hockey stick. Despite this damning evidence, Sherry continued to deny any involvement in her disappearance. However, James provided the police with details about Sherry's disappearance that only someone with insider knowledge would know. Consequently, on March 3, 2022, Sherry was arrested by the FBI for lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to plead guilty to these charges as part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors. In the subsequent sentencing, Sherry's defense team requested a lenient sentence of 1 month in prison and 7 months of home detention. However, the prosecution recommended a more severe 18-month sentence. Ultimately, the court sentenced Sherry to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine in September 2022, accepting the prosecution's recommendation. During her sentencing, the judge described she as manipulative and dishonest. At the sentencing hearing, Sherry apologized to those who had been affected by her actions and acknowledged her guilt. She took responsibility for her dishonesty and the harm it had caused to herself and others. Sherry was released from prison in August 2023 and placed in a halfway house. Her relationship with Keith ended on the day of her arrest in March 2022, when Keith learned the truth about her actions. Shortly after Sherry's guilty plea, Keith filed for divorce and sought full custody of their children.